Have you ever tried to hold a fistful of sand at the beach, squeezing it tightly in your palm, believing that the force of your grip could keep every grain in place? And yet, the tighter you clench your fist, the more freely the sand escapes through the gaps between your fingers, until all you are left with is an empty, aching hand. This is the perfect metaphor for how we often move through life itself. We cling so tightly to our expectations, our plans, our désirs, and our ideas of how things should be. We try to control outcomes, manage perceptions, and hold back the inevitable tides of change, believing that our constant effort is what keeps our world from falling apart. But this struggle, this relentless clenching, leaves us in a state of quiet exhaustion, a deep, pervasive weariness that sleep alone cannot cure. It is the exhaustion of a soul fighting against the natural current of existence. This feeling of being stuck, of being quietly overwhelmed, has become the silent anthem of our modern age. We are caught in a relentless cycle of striving, driven by the pressures of work, the invisible weight of societal expectations, and the endless, curated highlight reels we scroll through on our screens. We are constantly measuring ourselves against others, haunted by a persistent feeling of not being enough, not having enough. Our minds are perpetually racing, oscillating between regrets about a past we cannot change and anxieties about a future that has not yet arrived. We have become so consumed by the narrative of what we must achieve, who we must become, and what we must acquire, that we have forgotten the simple, profound art of just being. We are running a race without a finish line, and we wonder why we feel so breathless, so lost. But what if the solution isn't to run faster, to grip tighter, or to build stronger walls against the uncertainties of life? What if there is another way, a path that does not demand more effort, but rather a different kind of attention? Thousands of years ago, a prince who became a sage, the Buddha, looked deeply into the nature of this same human struggle. He saw that the root of our suffering was not in the world outside of us, but in the way our own minds cling to it, resist it, and misunderstand it. And he offered a path, not as an escape from the realities of life, but as a way to find freedom and peace right in the middle of them. It is a path that gently invites us to open our hands, to release our grip. It is the path of letting go, of cultivating a clear and present awareness called mindfulness, and of awakening to the true nature of reality. This is not a journey to a faraway land, but a journey inward, to the quiet, spacious sanctuary of our own hearts. To understand the path to peace, we must first have the courage to look directly at the nature of our own unrest. In the Buddhist tradition, this unrest is called dukkha. This word is often translated as suffering, but its meaning is far deeper and more subtle than just momentary pain or tragedy. Dukkha is the pervasive, underlying sense of dissatisfaction that runs like a quiet hum beneath the surface of our lives. It is the feeling that something is not quite right, the subtle ache of incompleteness, the friction we feel as we rub against the grain of reality. It is the disappointment when a joyful moment ends, the anxiety we feel about the future, the frustration when things do not go our way, and the deep, often unacknowledged stress of simply trying to hold our lives together. The Buddha, in his first great teaching, did not just state that this dissatisfaction exists. He made a revolutionary proclamation. He said that it has a cause, a discernible origin that we can investigate and understand for ourselves. The cause of this deep-seated unrest, he explained, is a powerful thirst within the mind, a concept known as tanha. It is a form of craving, a deep longing for things to be different than they are. It is the relentless desire for pleasant experiences to continue, the desperate push against unpleasant ones, and the constant search for a stable ground in a world that is forever shifting. This thirst is not abstract. It manifests in every corner of our daily existence. It is the itch that makes us reach for our phone for another scroll of validation, the craving for a particular food that we believe will bring us comfort, the longing for a word of praise, the deep desire for our life to look more like the idealized images we see. It is a constant reaching, grasping, and wanting, a momentum that propels us from one moment to the next, always seeking the next thing that we believe will finally quench our thirst and make us feel whole. But this thirst is insatiable, and the more we drink from its well, the thirstier we become. This constant craving, over time, solidifies into something harder, more deeply rooted. It becomes what is known as upadana, which translates as clinging or attachment. This is the true root of our deepest suffering. Clinging is the tightening of the fist around the sand. It is the mind's refusal to accept the fluid, flowing nature of reality. And this clinging is not merely a desire for material possessions, for a bigger house or a newer car. The Buddha pointed to 4 primary forms of clinging that bind us to the wheel of dissatisfaction. The first, and most obvious, is clinging to sense pleasures, the attachment to agreeable sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and physical sensations. We mistake the fleeting pleasure they provide for genuine happiness, and so we orchestrate our lives around chasing them, becoming agitated and despondent when they fade, as they always must. Far more subtle, and perhaps more powerful, is the second form, clinging to views and opinions. Think of how tightly we hold onto our beliefs, our ideologies, our judgments about what is right and what is wrong. We build our identity around these views. They become my truth. And when someone challenges them, it feels like a personal attack. This clinging creates a rigid mind, incapable of empathy or understanding. It is the source of arguments with loved ones, of the inability to listen, of the righteous anger that fuels so much conflict in our world. We suffer because we would rather be right than be at peace. We become prisoners of our own perspectives, unable to see the vast, open sky of reality beyond the narrow window of our own beliefs. The third form is clinging to rites and rituals, believing that the external performance of certain ceremonies or practices in itself the path to liberation. We become attached to the form rather than the essence, focusing on the correct way to bow, to chant, or to meditate, while losing sight of the goal, which is the transformation of the heart and mind. The final and most profound form of clinging is the attachment to a doctrine of a self. This is the deepest and most tenacious attachment of all. It is the belief in and the clinging to the idea of a permanent, separate, and solid me. This me is a story, a collage we assemble from our memories, our body, our feelings, our job title, our relationships, and our accomplishments. We spend our entire lives polishing, defending, and promoting this story of me. And why do we cling so desperately? At its core, clinging is a strategy born from fear. We cling because we are terrified of the fundamental truth of our existence, the truth of impermanence, or anicca. We know, in our bones, that everything changes. Our bodies age, our relationships evolve, our feelings are in constant flux. Joy turns to sorrow, and life itself ends in death. This constant change feels threatening, so we try to create an illusion of stability by holding on. We think that if we can just possess enough things, secure enough love, or achieve enough status, we can build a fortress that will protect us from the winds of change. But this fortress is an illusion. The more we possess, the more we have to fear losing. The more we identify with our roles and our relationships, the more shattered we feel when they inevitably transform. We have made a fundamental mistake. We have confused who we are with what we have. And in doing so, we have set ourselves up for inevitable pain, because everything we cling to is by its very nature impermanent. Our attachment to it is a direct contract with future suffering. There is a timeless story that illustrates this perfectly. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long journey. They came to a river with a strong current. A young woman stood at the bank, afraid to cross. Without a word, the senior monk hoisted her onto his back, carried her across the swirling water, and set her down gently on the other side. The two monks continued their journey in silence. Hours passed. The sun began to set. Suddenly, the junior monk could contain himself no longer. He burst out, "Brother, what you did was wrong. Our monastic rules forbid us from even touching a woman. How could you break such a sacred precept?" The senior monk looked at him calmly, a gentle smile on his face. He replied softly, "Brother, I left that woman by the riverbank hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This is the question that echoes through our own lives. What are we still carrying? The hurtful comment from a decade ago, the mistake we can't forgive ourselves for, the expectation of how our life was supposed to turn out. We are all like the junior monk, carrying heavy burdens in our minds long after the events have passed. We are clinging to memories, to rules, to grievances, and to ideas. And it is this clinging, this mental carrying, that is the source of our weariness. Understanding this is the first step toward freedom, to see, with clarity, that our suffering is not inflicted upon us by the world, but is generated by the mind's own habit of grasping and holding on. This realization is not a cause for despair, but for hope, because if the cause of suffering is within us, then so is the cure. The alternative to clinging is not a cold and empty detachment, but a warm and wise release. It is the courageous act of unclenching the fist, of letting the sand of life flow freely through our fingers, trusting that this release is not an act of loss, but an act of profound liberation. Now that we have diagnosed the ailment, the suffering born from clinging, we can begin to explore the remedy. What does it truly mean to let go? And how can we learn this gentle art in a world that tells us to hold on ever tighter? Having seen that our suffering arises from the mind's habit of clinging, the path forward seems simple. Let go. And yet, for many of us, those two words are among the most difficult to put into practice. The phrase itself can feel passive, like an admission of defeat in a culture that celebrates persistence, grit, and holding on against all odds. Letting go can sound like giving up, like surrendering to failure. We imagine it as a state of apathy, a cold indifference to the world, a resignation to a life devoid of passion and purpose. But this is a profound misunderstanding of one of the most active, courageous, and liberating arts a human being can learn: true letting go, in the spiritual sense, is not an act of weakness. It is an act of supreme strength and intelligence. It is not about turning your back on life. It is about turning to face it, fully and without resistance. It is crucial to first draw a clear line between letting go and giving up. Giving up is an act of aversion. It comes from a place of despair and frustration. When we feel so overwhelmed by a situation that we can no longer bear it, it is a slammed door, a retreat, a refusal to engage with reality. When we give up, we are still caught in the struggle. We are simply choosing to flee the battlefield, but the war still rages within our minds. Letting go, on the other hand, comes from a place of acceptance and wisdom. It is not a rejection of reality, but a deep alignment with it. It is the gentle opening of a hand, rather than the throwing down of a weapon. It is the quiet recognition that our frantic efforts to control the uncontrollable are the very source of our pain. It is looking at a torrential river and realizing you cannot stop it by building a dam with your bare hands, but you can learn to swim with the current. Giving up is a declaration of defeat. Letting go is a declaration of freedom. This leads to another common fear, the fear that if we let go of our attachments, we will lose our ambition and our drive. If I let go of my desire for a successful career, will I become lazy? If I let go of my attachment to my relationship, does that mean I no longer care? The answer is a clear no. The art of letting go does not ask you to abandon your goals or your efforts. It asks you to abandon your attachment to the outcomes. There is a world of difference between the two. You can, and should, pour your entire heart into your work, your art, your family, and your passions. Act with diligence, with integrity, and with all the energy you can muster. But you learn to release your white-knuckled grip on the specific results. You find the meaning and the joy in the process itself, in the act of creation, in the expression of love, in the dedicated effort, rather than pinning all your hopes for happiness on a future reward, a specific level of praise, or a particular imagined outcome. In fact, this is a far more powerful and effective way to live when you are not crippled by the fear of failure or driven by an ego that constantly needs validation. You are liberated. You become more present, more creative, and more resilient, because your sense of self-worth is no longer tied to the unpredictable whims of the external world. So, how do we practice this art in the laboratory of our own mind? It is a skill, and like any skill, it begins with simple, repeatable steps. The first step is always acknowledgement. You cannot let go of a rope you do not realize you are holding. This requires a moment of stillness, a moment to turn your attention inward and ask, what am I clinging to right now? Perhaps it is the resentment from an old argument, the anxiety about an upcoming meeting, the longing for someone's approval, or the stubborn belief that things should be different than they are. Name it softly to yourself. See it clearly. without judgment. The second step is to feel it fully. Instead of trying to immediately push the feeling away, you do the opposite. You invite it in. Where does this clinging live in your body? Is it a tightness in your throat, a hollow feeling in your stomach, a tension in your shoulders? Allow yourself to feel the raw, physical sensation of the attachment. Observe its texture, its temperature, its vibration. In this step, you are separating the story in your head from the raw energy in your body. You are simply being with the feeling as a pure sensation, without adding more layers of judgment or analysis. You are witnessing it without becoming it. The third and most crucial step is the conscious choice to release. This is the active part of letting go. It is a gentle but firm intention to soften the grip. You can use your breath as your greatest ally in this practice. As you breathe in, acknowledge the feeling. Here is the tightness. I feel it. As you breathe out, imagine that tightness softening, dissolving, and flowing out of you with the breath. You can visualize your hand, which has been clenched into a tight fist. Slowly, finger by finger, opening up. You may have to do this over and over again. Letting go is not a single event. It is a continuous practice of release. With every out-breath, you are giving yourself the gift of freedom. You are treating yourself with compassion, recognizing that carrying this burden is painful, and you deserve to set it down. We can apply this practice to the two great realms of our suffering, the past and the future. To let go of the past is to practice forgiveness. Holding on to anger and resentment is like holding a hot coal in your hand, hoping to throw it at someone else. In the end, you are the only one who gets burned. Forgiveness is not about condoning what happened or letting the other person off the hook. Forgiveness is about releasing yourself from the prison of the past. It is the recognition that by endlessly replaying the story of your hurt, you are the one who continues to suffer. Forgiveness is the ultimate act of letting go of the story of what should have been, so you can fully embrace the reality of what is. To let go of the future is to release anxiety. Anxiety is almost always a product of clinging to a specific vision of a future that does not yet exist and may never exist. We torture ourselves with fantasies of what might go wrong. The practice here is to acknowledge our fears and hopes for the future, and then to gently guide our attention back to the only place where life is actually happening, this present moment. This single breath, we can plan for the future. We can act to create the life we want. But we must let go of the need to control it. There is a powerful old story that perfectly captures this human dilemma. In Southeast Asia, hunters have a clever way of trapping monkeys. They take a coconut or a gourd and drill a hole in it just large enough for a monkey's open hand to slip through. They place some tempting bait, like peanuts or rice, inside and anchor the gourd to a tree. Sooner or later, a monkey comes along, smells the bait, and slips its hand inside. It grasps a huge fistful of the prize. But now, its clenched fist is too large to withdraw from the hole. The monkey is trapped. It pulls and screeches, growing more and more frantic. But it is held fast. The hunters can then approach at their leisure. All the monkey has to do to be free, to escape to the safety of the trees, is to do one simple thing: open its hand and let go of the peanuts. But its craving, its powerful, instinctual clinging, is its cage. it cannot bring itself to release the prize, and so it loses its freedom. We must ask ourselves, what are the peanuts we are refusing to let go of? Is it a dead-end job we cling to out of fear? Is it a painful memory that we feel defines us? Is it the need to be seen as perfect? Is it the stubborn belief that our way is the only right way? In so many areas of our lives, we are that monkey, holding on to something that is keeping us stuck, stressed, and suffering, when freedom is just one decision away, the decision to open our hand. This art of letting go is the key that unlocks the door of the cage we have built for ourselves. But to see the lock clearly, to find the keyhole, we need a source of light. We need a way to illuminate the present moment so we can see what we are holding on to. This steady, illuminating light is the practice of mindfulness. If the art of letting go is the key that unlocks our cage, then mindfulness is the light we need to find the keyhole. Without this light, we stumble in the darkness of our own minds, unaware of the habits, reactions, and attachments that hold us captive. We live our lives on autopilot, driven by unconscious urges and lost in a constant stream of inner chatter. Mindfulness, or sati in the ancient Pali language, is the simple, yet revolutionary, act of switching on that light. It is the practice of paying attention, on purpose, to the present moment, without judgment. It is the gentle, radical act of showing up for your own life. Perhaps the greatest misconception about mindfulness is that it is about emptying the mind or stopping our thoughts. This is not only impossible, but it also creates an immediate sense of failure for anyone who tries. The mind's nature is to think, just as the heart's nature is to beat. We cannot simply command it to stop. Mindfulness does not ask us to stop the river of thoughts. It asks us to change our relationship to it. Instead of being swept away by the current, tossed about by every wave of thought and emotion, we learn to sit peacefully on the riverbank and simply watch the water flow by. We become the witness, not the victim, of our own inner experience. To understand the power of this practice, we must first appreciate the default state of the untrained mind. In Buddhist psychology, this is often called the monkey mind. Imagine a restless monkey in a room full of windows. It leaps from one window, which looks out onto a memory from the past, to another window that shows a worry about the future. It then jumps to a sound it hears outside, then gets distracted by an itch on its own body, then swings over to a window showing a fantasy or a daydream. This is the chaotic, frantic, and exhausting nature of our attention. We are rarely ever fully where we are. When we are at work, we think about our vacation. On vacation, we worry about the emails piling up at work. This internal fragmentation is a primary source of our stress and anxiety. Mindfulness practice is the gentle training of this monkey mind. We are not trying to punish or cage the monkey. We are simply giving it a calm, steady job to do, a place to rest its attention. And that place is the present moment. The most common and accessible way to begin this training is through the practice of mindfulness of breath, or anapanasati. The breath is the perfect anchor for our attention. It is always with us, from the moment we are born to the moment we die. It is utterly neutral, without any complicated story attached to it. And most importantly, the breath is always undeniably in the present. You cannot breathe in the past. nor can you breathe in the future. To be aware of your breath is to be aware of the here and now. The practice itself is beautifully simple. You find a comfortable posture, one that embodies a sense of dignity and wakefulness. Either sitting on a cushion or a chair, you close your eyes gently, and you bring your attention to the physical sensations of your own breathing. Perhaps you feel the cool air entering your nostrils and the warm air leaving, or perhaps you notice the gentle rise and fall of your chest or your abdomen. You don't need to change your breath, control it, or force it in any way. Your only task is to observe it, to feel it as it is, and then the most important part of the practice will happen. Your mind will wander. It will be distracted by a thought, a sound, a memory, a plan. This is not a mistake. It is not a sign of failure. This is simply what minds do. The real practice, the moment of pure mindfulness, is the instant you realize you have been distracted. My mind has wandered into thinking. In that moment of recognizing, you have already woken up. And what do you do then with immense kindness and patience? As if you were guiding a lost puppy back home, you gently, without any scolding or frustration, escort your attention back to the feeling of the breath. This is the entire practice, returning again and again and again. Each time you return to the breath, you are strengthening the muscle of your attention. You are carving a new neural pathway in your brain, a pathway of calm, focused presence. A crucial element of this practice is the quality of non-judgment. As you sit, you will observe the full spectrum of your inner world. Thoughts of boredom, doubt, anger, or sleepiness will arise. The tendency is to judge them. I shouldn't be thinking this, or I'm terrible at this. Mindfulness invites a different approach. We simply note what is present. Boredom is here. This is the feeling of anger. Sleepiness is present. We observe these states with a calm, scientific curiosity, seeing them as temporary mental events, like clouds passing through the vast sky of our awareness. This practice creates a precious space between our sense of self and the contents of our mind. We realize we are not our thoughts. We are the awareness that is aware of the thoughts. This space is the beginning of liberation. But mindfulness is not meant to be confined to a meditation cushion. Its ultimate purpose is to infuse our entire life with presence. The great Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, beautifully illustrated this with a story about washing the dishes. He said that when you are washing the dishes, you should only be washing the dishes. This means that while you are standing at the sink, you are not mentally rehearsing an argument or rushing to finish so you can watch television. You are fully present with the act of washing. You feel the warmth of the water on your hands. You notice the scent of the soap. You see the iridescent bubbles. You hear the sound of the plate being scrubbed clean. The mundane chore is transformed into a sacred act, a meditation. If you are incapable of washing the dishes joyfully, he said, you will also be incapable of enjoying your dessert. The miracle is not to perform extraordinary feats, but to be fully present for the ordinary miracles of our daily lives. We can apply this principle to anything. We can practice mindful eating by truly tasting our food, noticing its textures and flavors, instead of mindlessly consuming it while watching a screen. We can practice mindful walking by feeling the sensation of our feet making contact with the earth, transforming a simple journey from one place to another into a calming, grounding experience. We can practice mindful listening by offering someone our complete, undivided attention, letting go of the need to plan our response, and instead, simply receiving their words with openness. This is not about adding more tasks to our already busy lives. It is about transforming the things we already do into opportunities for peace and presence. Mindfulness brings us home to our bodies, home to our senses, home to the only moment we ever truly have, which is this one. It is the steady lamp that illuminates our inner world, allowing us to see clearly the workings of our own minds. And now that we have this bright, steady light, we can begin to use it not just to see, but to understand. The next step on our journey is to take this clear, mindful awareness and use it to look deeply into the very nature of what it reveals. This practice of deep looking, of seeing things as they truly are, is the path of insight. The practice of mindfulness gives us a priceless gift. It gives us the clarity to see what is happening in our inner world as it is happening. We switch on the light in a room that was previously dark, and for the first time, we can see the furniture, the clutter, the patterns on the floor. But seeing is only the first step. The ultimate goal of this path is not just to see, but to understand. It is to use that bright, steady light of mindfulness to look so deeply into the nature of our experience that we begin to perceive its fundamental truths. This practice of deep looking is called vipassana, or insight. It is the wisdom, the prajna, that cuts through illusion and sets us free. Insight is not about gaining more intellectual knowledge or adopting a new philosophy. It is the direct, experiential seeing of reality as it is, not as our fears, hopes, or ingrained beliefs project it to be. As we turn this focused attention inward, we discover that all of our experiences, without exception, are characterized by three fundamental truths. These are often called the three marks of existence. The first, and most accessible, of these is anicca, or impermanence. With the clarity of mindfulness, we see this truth in every corner of our being. We watch our breath and notice that each inhalation has a beginning, a middle, and an end, followed by an exhalation that also arises and passes away. We observe our thoughts and see that they appear from nowhere, linger for a moment, and dissolve. Feelings of joy, sadness, anger, or peace come and go like weather patterns, none of them permanent. We look at our own bodies and realize they are not a static object, but a dynamic process, with cells dying and being born in every moment. The entire universe, from the fleeting life of a thought to the slow erosion of a mountain, is in a state of constant, unrelenting flux. Intellectually, we all know this. We say things like, "Nothing lasts forever," but our hearts have not learned the lesson. We still live as if things will stay the same. We cling to pleasant moments, desperately trying to freeze them in time. We hold on to our youth, our health, and our relationships as if they were solid possessions. We build our entire sense of security on things that are, by their very nature, unstable and destined to change. This constant, subtle resistance to the law of impermanence is a primary source of our struggle. Insight is not just knowing that things change. It is the direct, visceral experience of this truth in the laboratory of our own body and mind. It is a deep letting go into the flow, realizing the futility and stress of trying to stand still in a moving river. This direct seeing of impermanence leads us to the second mark of existence, dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness, because every conditioned experience, everything we can see, hear, taste, touch, or think, is impermanent. It is therefore incapable of providing ultimate, lasting happiness. This is the deeper meaning of dukkha. It doesn't mean that life is nothing but pain and misery. The world is filled with immense beauty, profound joy, and deep love. But because all of these experiences are transient, they are inherently unreliable. There is a subtle background radiation of anxiety that comes with even the most pleasant experiences, the quiet knowledge that this too shall pass. Dukkha is the friction we feel when we try to lean on something that is constantly shifting. It is the inherent disappointment woven into the fabric of seeking security in the insecure. When we look deeply with insight, we see this characteristic not just in our pain, but even in our pleasures. We see that the happiness derived from external things is fleeting and conditional, and this understanding begins to turn our search for peace inward. This leads us to the third, most profound, and most liberating insight, anatta, or non-self. Having seen that everything we experience is in a constant state of flux, a new question naturally arises. Who is this I that is experiencing all of this? Is there a permanent, unchanging core, a little person inside, a CEO of the mind who is the owner of these thoughts, feelings, and experiences with the sharp scalpel of insight? We begin to investigate. We look for this self. Is it in the body? The body is an ever-changing collection of flesh, bone, and blood, not a solid, singular entity. Are we our feelings? Feelings are fleeting visitors that come and go without our permission. Are we our thoughts? Thoughts arise and vanish like bubbles in water. The Buddha taught that what we call a self is, in fact, a combination of 5 dynamic processes, known as the 5 aggregates. These are the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. What we mistake for a solid, separate self is simply the momentary coming together of these 5 ever-changing streams of energy. There is no static being, only a dynamic process of becoming. There is no thinker, only the thinking. There is no feeler, only the feeling. The self we cherish and defend so fiercely is more like a convenient label we apply to a constantly shifting process, like a name we give to a wave, forgetting that the wave is just a temporary expression of the entire ocean. There is a beautiful ancient metaphor for this. Imagine you are standing on the banks of the great river Ganges. You look at the powerful, flowing water and say, "This is the Ganges." You come back the next day, stand in the same spot, and say again, "This is the Ganges." The name is the same. The location is the same. But is it the same river? Not a single drop of water you saw the day before is present today. The river is not a fixed thing. It is a process. It maintains its identity only as a ceaseless flow of change. The river is a verb, not a noun. So it is with what we call ourself. We have the same name. We carry the same passport. We have a collection of memories that provide a sense of continuity. But the reality is that the person who woke up this morning is not, in a very real sense, the same person who went to sleep last night. Our cells have changed. Our mood has changed. Thousands of thoughts have come and gone. We are a river of psychophysical phenomena, constantly flowing, constantly renewing, realizing this truth of non-self. Anatta is not a nihilistic or frightening experience. On the contrary, it is the doorway to the greatest liberation. If there is no fixed, solid self to defend, then who is it that feels insulted? If there is no separate self to aggrandize, then what is the purpose of a life driven by ego and pride? If the I is just a process, it means it is not inherently flawed, broken, or sinful. It is simply a flow of nature. The deep insight into non-self dissolves the very root of clinging, because the entity that was doing the clinging is revealed to be an illusion. This dissolves the imaginary wall between self and other, leading to a profound sense of compassion and interconnectedness with all of life. The struggle to protect and promote the self is seen for what it is, a stressful and unnecessary burden. This wisdom is not something to be believed. It is something to be seen. You can read 1,000 menus, but you will never satisfy your hunger. You must eat the food for yourself. Vipassana meditation is the process of eating the food of your own experience and tasting its true flavors for yourself. The flavor of impermanence, the flavor of unsatisfactoriness, and the liberating flavor of non-self. When we see this directly, our whole perspective shifts. We stop fighting with reality and learn to dance with it. But this profound insight also brings up a fascinating question. If there is no solid self, then what is this persistent inner voice? This character in my head that seems to be running the show, the one that worries, judges, and tells me who I am. To continue our journey, we must now turn the light of our awareness onto this powerful and mysterious construct, the very architect of our perceived identity, the ego, after the profound and perhaps unsettling realization of non-self. A critical question hangs in the air. If there is no solid, unchanging I at the center of our being, then what is this voice in my head? What is this constant narrator that plans, judges, worries, and tells the story of my life from morning until night? This persistent sense of being a separate, individual self is the activity of what we call the ego. In the landscape of Buddhist psychology, the ego is not seen as an evil entity to be destroyed, nor is it a solid thing to be located. Rather, the ego is a verb. It is a process, a ceaseless activity of the mind that creates and defends a sense of personal identity. It is the ghost in the machine, the narrator who has mistaken itself for the author of the story. This ego process begins in early childhood. It starts with a name, a reflection in the mirror, the words me and mine. Slowly and unconsciously, we begin to construct a story of who we are. The ego is the master storyteller, weaving a narrative from the threads of our experiences. It gathers our memories, clinging to the pleasant ones and pushing away the painful ones, creating a personal history. It then collects labels and identities and stitches them onto this story like badges of honor. I am a man. I am a woman. I am a doctor. I am a mother. I am an anxious person. I am a spiritual person. The ego defines itself by what it believes it possesses. My body, my thoughts, my feelings, my house, my country. Its primary function is to draw a thick, solid line between me and not me, creating a sense of separation from the rest of the world, because the ego is a constructed story and not a fundamental reality. It is inherently insecure. Deep down, it knows it's an imposter. This deep-seated insecurity is the fuel for much of our suffering, and it manifests in several recognizable ways. First is the ego's insatiable need for validation. It constantly seeks proof of its own existence and importance from the outside world. This is the driving force behind our craving for likes on social media, our desire for praise from our boss, our need for our partner to see us in a certain way. Each piece of external approval is like a temporary patch on the ego's fragile structure. Second is the ego's habit of comparison and judgment. To feel real and substantial, the ego needs to define itself against others. It constantly measures: am I smarter, richer, more successful, more attractive than them? To feel up, it needs to place someone else down, which fuels a constant stream of inner criticism and judgment towards others. Perhaps its most troublesome manifestation is its defensiveness. Why does a small piece of criticism feel so painful? Why do we get so enraged when our political or religious views are challenged? It is because the ego has identified with those views and possessions. It believes, I am my job, I am my beliefs, I am my reputation. Therefore, when any of these are attacked, the ego perceives it as a threat to its very survival. It rises up in a fury of defense, creating arguments, conflict, and a sense of personal injury. The ego's greatest fear is its own diminishment, its own death. This is why we fear failure, rejection, and public humiliation so intensely. They threaten to unravel the carefully constructed story of the competent, lovable self that the ego has spent a lifetime building. Let us consider a modern story. Imagine a man named David, a high-powered CEO of a successful tech company. To the outside world, he is the pinnacle of success. He has immense wealth, a respected position, and a beautiful family. Yet, internally, David is a prisoner of anxiety. He works relentlessly. His sleep is poor, and his temper is short. He is constantly driven, but he never arrives at a feeling of peace. One day, after a health scare brought on by stress, his doctor urges him to try meditation. Reluctantly, he agrees as he begins the practice of simply watching his own mind. He starts to see the patterns for the first time. He sees a relentless inner voice pushing him, telling him he isn't doing enough, that he could lose it all at any moment. With guidance, he traces this voice back to its roots. He remembers a childhood marked by his father's business failure and the shame it brought upon his family. He sees that, as a young boy, he made an unconscious vow to never be like that, to never be seen as insignificant. His entire life, his ferocious ambition, his relentless work ethic, was not a simple drive for success, but the ego's epic, lifelong project to build an impenetrable fortress of wealth and status around that core childhood wound. His identity as CEO wasn't just a job title. It was his shield, his proof that he was not a failure. He realizes he has been running from a ghost for 40 years. This realization doesn't make him quit his job. It does something far more profound. It transforms his relationship to it. When he now feels the compulsive urge to check the stock market, he can smile and recognize, There is the fear of being insignificant. When he feels a flash of anger in a boardroom disagreement, he can note there is the ego, defending its territory. This is the path of working with the ego, not through destruction, but through compassionate awareness. It is the subtle but life-altering shift from identification to observation. It is the difference between saying, "I am angry," and saying, "I notice the energy of anger is arising within me." That small space you create between the awareness and the feeling is the space of freedom, the space of choice. In that space, you can decide whether to act on the anger or to simply let its energy dissipate. You learn to treat the ego not as a villain, but perhaps as a misguided and anxious guardian, a part of your psyche that is just trying to protect you using the only clumsy tools it has ever known: control, fear, and separation. When it flares up, you can meet it with a quiet, internal kindness. "I see you. I know you're scared, and you're trying to keep me safe. Thank you, but I am okay. I can handle this." The goal is not to annihilate the ego. A functional sense of self is necessary to navigate the world. We need it to remember our name, to drive a car, to maintain relationships and responsibilities. The true goal is to demote the ego from its position as a tyrannical master to that of a useful servant. When the ego is in charge, life is a constant battle. When awareness is in charge, the ego can be used as a tool when needed, and then set aside. When it is no longer running the show, it begins to relax, to become more transparent and less demanding. By engaging in this gentle, inner dialogue, we begin to quiet the civil war within our own minds. The constant need to defend, to prove, to compare, and to control starts to fade. In its place, a new quality emerges, a vast inner spaciousness, a sense of ease and stillness that was always there, but was simply obscured by the ego's noisy activity. We have cleared the ground, we have calmed the inner conflict, and now, a beautiful possibility opens up before us. Into this quiet, open space of the heart, we can begin to consciously cultivate the most beautiful of human qualities. We can begin to plant the seeds of boundless love, deep compassion, genuine joy, and unshakable equanimity. We are now ready to fill our inner home with light. Having quieted the relentless narrator of the ego, we discover within us a profound stillness, a spaciousness that was always present, but previously unheard beneath the noise. The work of this path is not merely to empty the house of our mind, but also to furnish it with beauty, warmth, and light. We now move from the practice of letting go of the unwholesome to the active practice of cultivating the wholesome. This is the journey into the radiant nature of the heart itself. The Buddhist tradition teaches that within every person, regardless of their past actions or present struggles, there exists a boundless capacity for love, compassion, joy, and peace. These qualities, known as the Brahma-viharas, or the four immeasurables, are not something we need to import from the outside. They are the very essence of our awakened nature, like a diamond buried in the mud, waiting to be uncovered and polished. The first of these divine abodes is metta, which translates as loving kindness. Metta is not the sentimental, conditional, or romantic love that we so often think of. It is a far more expansive and stable state. It is a universal, unconditional well-wishing for the genuine happiness and well-being of all living things. It is a gentle, friendly, and warm attitude towards existence. A simple but powerful intention that radiates from the heart, whispering, "May you be happy. May you be well." The practice of cultivating metta is a systematic training of the heart. Traditionally, we begin with the most difficult person to offer this kindness to ourselves. We sit quietly and gently repeat phrases of well-wishing, directed inward. May I be safe from inner and outer harm. May I be healthy and strong. May I be happy and content. May I live with ease. For many, this is the hardest step, as the inner critic immediately protests, but we persist gently, understanding that we cannot offer a thirsty person a drink from an empty cup. Our own heart must first be filled. Once we have touched into a sense of warmth for ourselves, we expand the circle. We bring to mind a benefactor or a dear friend, someone for whom it is easy to feel love, and we radiate the same wishes to them. May you be happy. May you be well. We feel our heart naturally open. Then, we stretch the muscle of the heart further. We bring to mind a neutral person, someone we see often but have no strong feelings about. A cashier at the store, a person on the bus. We offer them the same sincere wishes, breaking down the barrier of indifference. The next stage is the most transformative. We bring to mind a difficult person, someone who has hurt us or with whom we have conflict. Here, the practice is not to condone their actions, but to recognize that holding on to anger and hatred is a poison that only harms ourselves for the sake of our own freedom. We try, as best we can, to wish them well, to wish for them to be free from the suffering that causes them to act harmfully. Finally, we open the floodgates of the heart, extending this loving kindness in all directions, to all beings everywhere, young and old, near and far, seen and unseen, without distinction and without exception. Metta is the direct, powerful antidote to the poison of anger, ill will, and hatred. The second immeasurable quality is karuna, or compassion. If metta is the wish for all beings to be happy, karuna is the heart's tender, trembling response upon witnessing that they are not. It is what happens when our loving kindness encounters suffering. The heart quivers, and the wish becomes, "May you be free from this suffering." It is vital to distinguish true compassion from pity. Pity looks down from a position of superiority. Compassion meets suffering at eye level. It is the recognition of a shared vulnerability, the understanding that this could be me. Compassion is the force that moves us from passive, well-wishing into active engagement. It is the antidote to cruelty and the desire to inflict harm. It is the engine of all altruistic action in the world. As we cultivate metta, compassion arises naturally. When we truly wish for someone's happiness, we cannot be indifferent to their pain. The third divine abode is mudita, or sympathetic joy. This is often the most challenging quality for the modern mind, which is so deeply conditioned by comparison and competition. Mudita is the ability to feel genuine, unselfish joy in the happiness, success, and good fortune of others. It is the polar opposite of jealousy and envy. It is the heart's celebration of another's light. Its guiding wish is, I am so happy for you. May your joy and your success continue and increase. The practice of mudita involves consciously training our attention to notice the happiness and virtue in others. When a colleague gets a promotion, instead of feeling the sting of envy, we can consciously choose to celebrate their success. When we see a couple laughing together, we can feel a sense of shared joy rather than loneliness. Mudita is the radical understanding that happiness is not a limited resource. The success of another does not diminish our own potential. In fact, by rejoicing in their happiness, we multiply the amount of joy in the world and in our own hearts. It is the direct and liberating antidote to the ego's poisons of jealousy and envy. The fourth and final immeasurable is upekkha, or equanimity. Equanimity is the grounding force that holds and balances the other three. It is a spacious, unshakable calm, a profound balance of mind that is rooted in wisdom. It is the ability to keep your heart open and loving to all, without being thrown off balance by the turbulent winds of life. The famous 8 worldly winds of praise and blame, success and failure, pleasure and pain, gain and loss. Equanimity is not cold indifference or detached apathy. It is a deep and loving engagement with reality, tempered by the profound understanding of impermanence and the law of karma, that all beings are the owners and heirs of their own actions. The heart of equanimity says, I will offer my love, my help, and my compassion, but I accept that I cannot control the outcome. Your happiness and suffering depend ultimately on your own choices, not on my wishes for you. It is the wisdom that protects the open heart from burnout and despair. It is the vast, clear sky that allows the sun of metta, the rain of karuna, and the light of mudita to touch the world without the sky itself being disturbed. These 4 qualities are not separate. They are 4 faces of one radiant heart. They work together in a beautiful, interconnected dance. Loving kindness is the sun that shines on everyone. Compassion is the ray of that sun that lands on a place of suffering to warm it. Sympathetic joy is the ray that lands on a place of happiness to make it shine even brighter. And equanimity is the vastness of space itself, which allows the sun to shine on everything without condition and without being overwhelmed. By undertaking these practices, we are not creating something new. We are simply returning home to the boundless potential of our own heart. But even with a heart softened by these practices, we are still human. We still live in a complex world, and the fiery energies of difficult emotions will inevitably arise. Our task now is to see how we can bring this newfound capacity for loving awareness to bear on one of the most powerful and challenging energies of all, the fire of anger. Of all the emotions that surge through the human heart, few are as powerful, as misunderstood, and as potentially destructive as the fiery energy of anger in our spiritual journey. After we have quieted the ego and begun to cultivate the beautiful states of love and compassion, it can be disillusioning to find this raw, hot energy still erupting within us. We may judge ourselves for it, believing it to be a sign of our failure or lack of progress. But the path of wisdom does not ask us to be perfect. It asks us to be present. The goal is not to eradicate anger, which is a natural human response, but to learn how to transform it. We must learn to meet this powerful messenger with courage and curiosity, to listen to the vital information it carries without being consumed by its flames. The wise approach to anger is not suppression, which is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. it will eventually explode to the surface with even greater force. Nor is it unrestrained expression, which is like throwing gasoline on a fire, causing harm to ourselves and others. The middle path is one of mindful transformation. To begin this transformation, we must first look beneath the surface of the anger itself. Anger is almost always a secondary emotion, a protective shield, a fierce guard dog standing at the gate of a much more vulnerable territory. When we feel the heat of anger rising, the practice is to pause, take a breath, and gently ask, what is it that you are protecting? Very often, the guard dog of anger is protecting the soft underbelly of fear. It arises when we perceive a threat, not just to our physical safety, but more often, a threat to our sense of self, our ego. When our beliefs are challenged, our reputation questioned, or our expectations are not met, the ego feels attacked, and its first and fastest line of defense is often a surge of angry, defensive energy. At other times, anger is a mask for deep hurt or sadness. It can feel more empowering, safer, to be furious than to admit that our feelings are hurt, that we feel rejected or abandoned. Anger creates an illusion of control in a situation where we feel powerless, and sometimes anger is simply a raw, primal signal that a core need is not being met, or that an important boundary has been violated. It is the life force within us screaming a powerful no. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh offered a beautiful and profound metaphor for working with anger. He taught us to treat our anger like a crying baby. When a baby cries, you do not ignore it or lock it in another room. That would be cruel. Nor do you yell at the baby and berate it for crying. That would be foolish and cause more distress. A good mother, upon hearing her baby cry, immediately stops what she is doing and goes to the child. She picks the baby up gently, pulls it to her heart, and embraces it with tenderness. She soothes it, whispering, "Do not worry. I am here for you. I will take care of you." We must learn to become this loving mother to our own anger. When the baby of anger begins to cry within us, our practice is to stop, to turn inward, and to embrace it with mindfulness. We can say to ourselves, breathing in, I know that the energy of anger is here in me. Breathing out, I am taking care of my anger. We are not judging it. We are not pushing it away. We are simply acknowledging its presence with a profound tenderness. The most direct way to hold our anger is to drop out of the story in our head and go directly into the feelings in our body. The story, the endless loop of he said, she said, this shouldn't have happened, is what fuels the fire. Instead, we bring our full attention to the physical sensations of the emotion. Where is the anger living in your body right now? Is it a searing heat in your chest, a tightening in your jaw, a constriction in your throat? Are your fists clenched? Is your stomach in a knot? Whatever the sensation, simply observe it. Breathe into it. Imagine your breath surrounding the raw sensation with a sense of spaciousness and care. You are not trying to get rid of the feeling. You are simply being with it, allowing its raw energy to be felt without being acted upon. When you do this, you make an incredible discovery. The raw energy of an emotion, when it is not fueled by thought, lasts only for about 90 seconds in the body. By staying with the physical sensation, you allow the wave to crest and pass through you naturally. Only after we have held the crying baby and calmed its initial storm can we begin the work of insight, of looking deeply to understand its cause. We can ask compassionate questions. Media anger, what caused you to arise? What was the seed of your suffering? As we look, we may see that the cause was a thoughtless word, a careless action, or a misunderstanding. Then, we can take our practice of looking deeply one step further. We can try to understand the suffering in the other person. What pain, what fear, what ignorance in them caused them to speak or act in that way. This is not about excusing harmful behavior. It is about depersonalizing it. We begin to see that their action was not aimed at us personally, but was a manifestation of their own suffering, their own crying baby. There is a classic Zen story that illustrates this perfectly. A monk is enjoying a peaceful moment, rowing his boat across a misty lake at dawn. Suddenly, with a loud thud, another boat crashes into his, jolting him and splashing water everywhere. He is filled with immediate, white-hot rage. He stands up, ready to scream at the careless person who has ruined his tranquility. But as the mist begins to clear, he sees that the other boat is empty. It simply broke free from its mooring on the shore and drifted into his path. In that instant, all of his anger vanishes. It evaporates into the morning mist. Where did it go? It had nowhere to land. It is easy to be angry at a person, but it is impossible to be angry at an empty boat. The profound lesson is that we are constantly being hit by empty boats. The people who hurt or frustrate us are most often acting out of their own unconsciousness, their own pain, their own drifting confusion. They are not plotting to harm us. They are simply an empty boat, pushed along by the unseen currents of their own suffering. When we can see the empty boat in the other person, our anger loses its target. It has no one to blame, and it dissolves. This practice of transforming anger does not mean we become passive or allow ourselves to be harmed. There is a vast difference between blind, destructive reaction and wise, compassionate action. After the inner flame has been calmed by mindfulness and cooled by the waters of understanding, we can then choose how to act. Our action may be to set a very clear and firm boundary. It may be to have a difficult conversation. It may be to remove ourselves from a harmful situation. But this action now comes from a place of clarity, strength, and love, not from a place of blind rage. The energy is cool and constructive, not hot and destructive. By learning to work with anger in this way, we transform a poison into a medicine. Anger ceases to be a destructive wildfire and becomes a source of incredible information, a signal that shows us where we are hurt, where our compassion is needed, and where wise action is required. And as we look at this powerful emotion, we often find another, more subtle energy lurking in its shadow. For just as anger often guards our present pain, there is another emotion that governs our future, the pervasive ghost of fear. Of all the shadows that dance in the landscape of the human mind, fear is perhaps the oldest and most primal. It is a fundamental instinct, a gift from our evolution designed to protect us, to keep us safe. The fear that makes you leap back from a speeding car or pull your hand from a hot stove is a manifestation of wisdom, a servant of life. But for most of us, the majority of the fear we experience is not of this kind. We are haunted by a different type of fear, a psychological fear, a chronic unease woven from the stories our minds tell. It is a ghost that lives not in the present moment, but in the imagined corridors of the future. The spiritual path does not promise a life free from fear, but it offers us the tools to change our relationship with it, to meet this powerful energy with awareness and kindness, and in doing so, to discover a courage we never knew we possessed. The first and most profound insight we can have about psychological fear is that it is almost always about something that is not happening right now. Fear is a product of memory and imagination. We remember a past pain and project it onto the future, imagining it will happen again. We create a fantasy of what might go wrong. I might lose my job. I might get sick. They might leave me. I might fail. We then react to this imaginary future scenario with a very real, physical, and emotional response in the present. We are suffering from our own imagination. The antidote to this is breathtakingly simple, yet require constant practice to bring the mind back, again and again, from the imagined future to the tangible reality of the present moment. When you feel the grip of fear, you can pause and ask yourself this radical question. In this exact moment, right now, as I am breathing, am I okay in this precise instant? Are you safe? Is your heart beating? Are you breathing almost always? The answer is yes. Fear is a vampire that cannot survive in the direct sunlight of the present moment. To bring ourselves into the present, we must learn to drop out of the frantic story in our heads and into the living wisdom of our bodies. The story is the fuel, the endless loop of what-if scenarios. The body is the reality. The practice is to turn towards the fear, not away from it, and to investigate, where does this fear live in my body? When you think that fearful thought, what happens physically? Do you feel a cold, tight knot in the pit of your stomach? Does your heart begin to race? Does your breathing become shallow and high in your chest? Do your shoulders tense up towards your ears instead of fighting these sensations? You practice allowing them to be there. You bring a gentle, curious attention to them. A powerful method for this is to meet the fear with a nurturing awareness. The first step is to simply recognize it. You name it softly in your mind. This is fear. Fear is present. This simple act of naming separates you from the emotion. You are not fear. You are the one who is aware of fear. The second step is to allow it to be there. You stop fighting it. Stop trying to push it away. You make space for the feeling, giving it permission to exist. This is a courageous act of non-resistance. The third step is to investigate with kindness. You get curious about the raw sensation. What is its texture? Is it vibrating or solid? Is it hot or cold? This curiosity transforms you from the victim of fear into a gentle scientist of your own inner experience. The final, crucial step is to nurture. You bring kindness to the part of you that is scared. You might place a hand over your heart or on your stomach and offer yourself words of comfort. It's okay. I'm here with you. This is a difficult feeling, but we will get through it together. In this step, you are realizing that you are the spacious awareness holding the fear, and you can offer that scared part of yourself the compassion it needs. The Buddha told a powerful story about two arrows. He said that in life, we will all be struck by a first arrow. This is the unavoidable pain of existence. A sudden loss, a frightening diagnosis, a moment of rejection. This first arrow is dukkha, the reality of suffering. But what we mortals often do, he said, is react to the pain of the first arrow with a storm of negative thoughts. Why me? This is terrible. I can't handle this. It's going to get even worse. This mental reaction, this story we tell ourselves about the pain, is like shooting ourselves with a second arrow. The first arrow is painful but clean. The second arrow, the one of our own making, is what creates prolonged suffering, anxiety, and despair. The practice of mindfulness is learning how to feel the clean pain of the first arrow, the raw energy of fear, without firing the second arrow of mental commentary and catastrophizing. Once the initial storm of fear has been met with this mindful embrace, we can use our insight to look deeply at its object. What am I truly afraid of here? We can trace the fear back to its roots. A fear of public speaking might be a fear of being judged. The fear of being judged may be a fear of being seen as unworthy. The fear of being unworthy may be a fear of being rejected and not loved. The fear of not being loved may be a fear of being utterly alone. Often, when we follow the thread all the way down, we find that many of our fears are connected to the deep, universal fear of change, of loss, of the great unknown of death. Seeing this doesn't magically make the fear disappear, but it depersonalizes it. We see that this is not just my pathetic little fear. This is a part of the shared human condition. This shared humanity can be a source of great comfort and connection. There is a story from the great Thai meditation master, Ajahn Chah. A young monk was meditating in his small hut in the forest when he looked up and saw a massive cobra slithering towards him. He was paralyzed with terror. He survived, but was haunted by the experience. When he told Ajahn Chah, the master, instead of comforting him, told him to go back to his hut and learn from the snake and the fear. The monk, trusting his teacher, sat in his hut, heart pounding, consciously bringing the image of the snake to mind and staying present with the raw feeling of terror in his body, not running from it. He did this for days, just being with the fear. One evening, walking back to his hut, he stepped on something that felt like a snake, and the same jolt of terror shot through him. He looked down and saw it was just a coiled piece of rope. In that moment, he had a profound insight. The cobra was not the real problem. The real problem was the readiness for fear in his own mind. The mind could be triggered by a real snake or just a piece of rope. The work was not to clear the entire forest of snakes. The work was to understand and free the mind from fear itself. This leads us to a new definition of courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. A life without fear would be reckless and short. True courage is the willingness to feel the fear and to act anyway, guided by your values and your wisdom. It is the ability to walk forward with your knees trembling. Mindfulness practice gives us the capacity to hold our fear with spaciousness, so that we are no longer paralyzed by it. It creates the inner freedom necessary for courageous action. Fear, when met with this compassionate awareness, ceases to be a paralyzing force and becomes a wise teacher. It points us to the things we care about most, the places where we are attached, and the situations that are calling for our bravery. But what happens when this fear is not a sharp, identifiable jolt, like seeing a snake, but a chronic, low-grade hum that buzzes beneath the surface of our entire life? This diffuse, future-oriented, and objectless fear has another name: anxiety. Our journey now takes us from the acute storm of fear into the persistent, rolling fog of anxiety. If fear is a sudden storm that rattles the windows of the mind, anxiety is the persistent, rolling fog that settles in for days, obscuring the landscape and chilling us to the bone, while fear often has a clear and present object, a snake on the path, a looming deadline. Anxiety is more diffuse, a free-floating apprehension. It is the vague but heavy feeling that something is wrong, or that something bad is about to happen, even when there is no immediate evidence of a threat. In our modern world, with its constant stimulation, relentless pressure, and pervasive uncertainty, we are living in an age of anxiety. This state of chronic unease is not a personal failing or a sign of weakness. It is a deeply understandable response of the nervous system to an environment that is constantly sending signals of alarm. To find our way through this fog, we must first understand its nature and then learn to use the simple, powerful tools of our own body and breath to find solid ground. At its core, anxiety is the habit of a mind that has become a perpetual time traveler. It cannot stay in the present. It relentlessly fast forwards into 1,000 possible futures, almost always focusing on the ones that end in catastrophe. Anxiety is the what-if disease. What if I fail this exam? What if they don't like me? What if I get sick? What if I made the wrong decision? The mind creates a fictional movie of a disastrous future and then plays it over and over again, forcing us to experience the emotional and physical turmoil of that disaster as if it were happening right now. The profound tragedy of anxiety is that our suffering does not come from the future event, which may or may not ever occur. Our suffering comes from the act of thinking about it in the present. We are poisoning the peace of this moment with fears about a moment that does not yet exist. This constant stream of mental threat signals has a direct and powerful effect on our physiology. The mind tells the body there is a tiger nearby, and the body, in its wisdom, prepares to fight or flee. This activates the sympathetic nervous system, our internal alarm system. The heart begins to race, to pump more blood to our limbs. Our breathing becomes shallow and rapid to take in more oxygen. Our muscles tense in readiness for action, and our digestive system shuts down to conserve energy. This is a brilliant system for surviving an encounter with an actual tiger, but in the case of anxiety, the tiger is imaginary. It's a thought, a worry, yet the body's alarm system stays switched on, day after day. This is why chronic anxiety is so physically exhausting. We are constantly preparing for a battle that is only happening in our minds. The beautiful truth is that we have within us a biological capacity to consciously switch this alarm system off. We can learn to activate our parasympathetic nervous system, the body's braking system, often called the rest and digest response. The most direct and powerful way to do this is through the intentional use of the breath. A long, slow exhale, in particular, sends a powerful signal up the vagus nerve directly to the brain, communicating a clear message: the threat is over. We are safe now. We can hack our own biology to create a state of calm. You can try this right now. Take a deep, full breath in through your nose. When you feel your lungs are full, take another quick sip of air right at the top. Then, with a long, slow sigh, exhale through your mouth for as long as you comfortably can. Do this 2 or 3 times. Notice the immediate shift. Notice the subtle release of tension, the gentle slowing of the mind. This physiological sigh is one of the most effective, on-the-spot antidotes to a rising wave of anxiety. Anxiety pulls our energy up into the chaotic whirlwind of our thoughts. The remedy is to intentionally bring our awareness back down, grounding ourselves in the solid reality of our senses. This practice short-circuits the anxious thought loop and anchors us firmly in the present moment, the only place where we are truly safe. Wherever you are, you can pause and gently guide your awareness through your senses. Start by looking around the room and softly naming to yourself 5 different things you can see: a lamp, a book, a crack in the wall, the color blue, our shadow. Then, turn your attention to the sense of touch, noticing 4 things you can feel: the texture of your clothes against your skin, the solidness of the chair beneath you, the temperature of the air, the feeling of your feet on the floor. Now, listen. What are 3 distinct sounds you can hear, far away or near? Then, notice 2 things you can smell. And finally, bring your attention to your mouth and notice 1 thing you can taste. This simple practice can, in moments, pull you out of the imaginary future and land you back in the sanity of the present. Imagine a farmer who plants a precious seed in his field. The very next day, his mind becomes consumed with anxiety. He thinks, what if there isn't enough rain? What if the sun is too strong? What if insects come and eat the sprout? What if a storm washes the whole field away? He spends all his days pacing, looking at the sky, and imagining all the ways his harvest could fail. He is so lost in his thoughts about the future that he forgets to do the simple, necessary things in the present. He forgets to water the soil, to pull the weeds, to tend the field. Anxiety is this nervous farmer. It is a state of obsessive worry about a future harvest we cannot control. And this obsession prevents us from lovingly tending the soil of the present moment, which is the only place where growth, peace, and true nourishment can be found. Our work is not to guarantee the future. Our work is to mindfully care for the present. At its deepest root, much of our anxiety stems from an intolerance of uncertainty. The mind craves guarantees. It wants to know, with 100% certainty, that everything is going to be all right. The practice of wisdom involves the radical acceptance that life is, by its very nature, uncertain. We cannot and will not ever have full control. Radical acceptance is not a passive resignation. It is the brave and conscious act of softening our resistance to this truth. It is noticing the mind's desperate craving for certainty and gently letting that craving go. We can learn to whisper to our anxious heart, "It is okay not to know. It is okay for things to be uncertain. I trust that I can handle whatever comes, when it comes." This releases the enormous and exhausting tension of trying to mentally manage a future that is, and always will be, beyond our control. By using our breath to calm our body, our senses to ground our mind, and our wisdom to make peace with uncertainty, we can learn to navigate the fog of anxiety and find islands of profound peace within our days. But the mind has other landscapes it can get lost in when it is not racing forward into a fearful future. It is often mired in the heavy terrain of the past, a landscape colored by loss, disappointment, and the quiet, pervasive ache of sadness. Our journey now turns from the frantic energy of anxiety to this gentle, tender, and often misunderstood emotion, to learn how we might heal its quiet heart. If anxiety is the mind's frantic race into an imagined future, sadness is the heart's slow pilgrimage into the landscape of the past. It is a gentle, often heavy, and pervasive emotion that arises in response to loss, disappointment, and the simple, poignant truth of impermanence in our modern culture, which so often fetishizes relentless positivity and strength. Sadness is treated like a problem to be solved, a weakness to be overcome, or a condition to be medicated. We are taught to cheer up, to look on the bright side, to distract ourselves with work or entertainment, or to numb the quiet ache with food, alcohol, or endless scrolling. But the path of wisdom teaches a different way. It reveals that healing does not come from avoiding sadness, but by learning how to be sad skillfully. The way out is through. We must learn to create a safe and compassionate space within ourselves for this tender emotion to be felt, heard, and integrated. At its core, sadness is the heart's natural and healthy response to loss. The loss can be monumental and life-altering. The death of a cherished loved one, the painful end of a relationship, the loss of a career, or a decline in our health. But sadness also arises from more subtle losses. We feel the sadness of losing a dream we once held for ourselves, the quiet grief of watching our children grow up and leave home, the poignant ache of nostalgia for our own lost youth, or even the simple, bittersweet sorrow of a beautiful moment ending. In this light, sadness is not a sign of something being wrong with us. It is a testament to our capacity to love and to connect. The pain of grief is the price of admission for a life of meaning. To feel deep sadness is to have felt deep love. The emotion itself is a tribute, a quiet monument to something or someone we valued. Our suffering, then, comes not from the sadness itself, but from our resistance to it. When the first waves of sadness appear, our immediate, conditioned reaction is often to build a dam, to fight it, to tell ourselves, I shouldn't be feeling this way, or I need to be strong. We add a layer of self-judgment and resistance on top of the initial pain. This is the second arrow. The practice of mindfulness invites us to do something radically different. It asks us to give ourselves permission to be sad. It encourages us to stop fighting, to lay down our weapons, and to simply allow the feeling to be present. Can you create a space for sadness within you? A space of non-judgmental allowance? Can you drop the story that you are broken and instead see yourself as a human being experiencing a natural and universal emotion? When we stop our war with sadness, it loses its power to overwhelm us. We are no longer wasting our precious energy in a futile battle, and we can use that energy to heal instead. The most direct way to hold our sadness without being swept away by it is to bring our attention to its physical landscape. Instead of getting lost in the looping story of the loss, we anchor our awareness in the raw sensations of the body. Where do you feel this sadness? Is it a profound heaviness in your chest, as if a stone were resting on your heart? Is it a lump in your throat that makes it difficult to speak or swallow? Is it a hollow, empty feeling in the pit of your stomach? Is it the feeling of tears welling up behind your eyes? The practice is to breathe with these sensations. As you breathe in, you acknowledge the feeling. Yes, there is heaviness here. As you breathe out, you try to soften the resistance around the feeling, just a little. You are not trying to push the sadness away. You are learning to hold it, to cradle it with a gentle, spacious, and compassionate awareness. By doing so, you allow the emotion to move through you, to be metabolized by the wisdom of the body, rather than getting stuck and festering in the mind. In Japan, there is an ancient art form called kintsugi, which means to join with gold. When a piece of pottery, a bowl, or a cup is broken, it is not thrown away. Instead, the pieces are carefully reassembled, and the cracks are mended with a lacquer mixed with powdered gold, silver, or platinum. The philosophy behind this art is that the object becomes more beautiful, more precious, and more unique precisely because it has been broken. The scars are not something to be hidden. They are illuminated, celebrated as an integral part of the object's history and journey. Our hearts are like these kintsugi bowls. Life will inevitably bring experiences that break our hearts. We will all know loss, grief, and sorrow. The path of healing is not to pretend we were never broken. It is to learn how to mend our hearts with the gold of self-compassion and mindful awareness. Our sorrows, when held with this kind of tenderness, do not leave us weakened. They leave us with a depth, a wisdom, and a profound beauty that was not there before. Our scars become our strength. Sadness, when we have the courage to sit with it, is a profound teacher. In a world that encourages speed and distraction, sadness slows us down. It forces us to be still, to turn inward, to reflect on what truly matters. It strips away the superficial layers of our lives and connects us to the very core of our being, to what we most deeply love and value. Sadness is also a secret doorway to compassion. When you have intimately known the landscape of your own sorrow, you can no longer be indifferent to the sorrow of others. Your heart breaks open, and you recognize the shared fragility of the human condition. Your personal pain becomes a bridge, not a wall. Furthermore, the experience of sadness is a direct teaching on impermanence. It reminds us that all things are fleeting, that joy is precious, and that we must cherish the people and the moments we have, right here and now. It is important, however, to distinguish between the healing experience of sadness and the painful cycle of rumination. To feel sadness skillfully is to be present with the raw emotion and the physical sensations in the body. In this moment, rumination, on the other hand, is when the mind gets caught in a toxic, repetitive loop of thought about the past. If only I had done this differently. Why did this have to happen to me? This mental churning does not heal. It only deepens the wound. The practice is to notice when the mind has been hijacked by these stories and to gently guide your awareness back to the feeling of the breath, back to the heaviness in the chest, back to the present moment. We are moving from unproductive thinking about our sadness to the direct, healing experience of our sadness. When we meet our sadness with this gentle courage, it ceases to be an enemy and becomes a sacred part of our journey. It honors what we have loved, and it softens our heart, making it more capable of love in the future. As we have seen, so many of our most powerful emotions, our anger, our fear, our anxiety, and our sadness arise within the context of our connections with one another. The pain we feel is so often relational pain, and the joy we seek is so often relational joy. This understanding leads us directly to the exploration of the very art of how we connect Our journey now moves from the inner world of our own emotions to the bridge that connects us to others, the way we speak and the way we listen. Having journeyed through the inner landscapes of our most powerful emotions, we arrive at a crucial recognition that so much of our anger, fear, and sadness is born, sustained, or healed within the context of our relationships with others. Our inner peace is inextricably linked to the quality of our connections, the way we communicate, the words we use, and the way we listen forms the very bridge between our heart and the heart of another. This bridge can be a source of conflict and misunderstanding, or it can become a sacred space of healing, connection, and profound love. The path of mindfulness does not stop at the edge of our own skin. It extends into every interaction, teaching us that communication itself can be one of the most meaningful spiritual practices we undertake. The foundation of all skillful communication, the very ground upon which the bridge is built, is not speaking, but listening. This is a radical departure from our normal way of interacting. Typically, when another person is speaking, we are not truly listening. We are half listening while the other half of our mind is busy preparing our rebuttal, searching for flaws in their logic, waiting impatiently for our turn to speak, or judging what they are saying based on our own preconceptions. Our mind is not a spacious, receptive vessel. It is a busy workshop, hammering out our own agenda. The Buddhist tradition teaches a practice of deep listening, which has only one purpose: to give the other person a chance to suffer less. It is the practice of offering someone the rare and precious gift of our full, unwavering, and non-judgmental presence. To practice deep listening, we must first learn to be still. As you listen, you bring awareness to your own body, to the feeling of your breath. You anchor yourself in the present moment. Your task is not to fix, to advise, or even to agree. Your task is simply to receive. You become a safe space for the other person to empty their heart, to untangle the knots of their own suffering by speaking them aloud. You listen without interrupting. You listen with patience. You listen with a compassionate curiosity, trying to understand the feelings and the unmet needs that lie beneath their words. A simple nod, a soft gaze, a gentle utterance of "I see" or "I understand" can be more healing than 1,000 words of advice. When a person feels truly heard, a miracle of connection happens. The walls of defensiveness and isolation begin to crumble. When the time comes to speak, our practice is to use what is called right speech, a core element of the Noble Eightfold Path. Right speech begins with a commitment to truthfulness. This means more than just avoiding outright lies. It means speaking with integrity. We refrain from exaggeration that paints us in a better light. We avoid gossip that harms the reputation of another who is not present. And we do not spread information that we are not certain is true. Before we speak, we can ask ourselves the first gatekeeper question: is what I am about to say true? This simple pause helps us to avoid causing immense harm with careless words, recognizing that our words have the power to create reality for ourselves and for others. But truth alone is not enough. A statement can be true, but also cruel and destructive. Therefore, our words must pass through a second gate. We must ask, is it kind in Vietnamese? This is known as Ai Ngu, which literally translates to loving speech. It is the practice of using words that nourish, heal, and encourage, rather than words that blame, criticize, and wound. Instead of using accusatory you statements like, "You always do this," or "You never listen," which immediately trigger defensiveness, we can practice using I statements. When this happens, I feel hurt, or I feel misunderstood when I hear those words. This communicates our own authentic experience without attacking the other person. Loving speech also means actively looking for opportunities to water the positive seeds in others. We so often take the good for granted and only speak up when there is a problem. The practice of I Nge encourages us to voice our appreciation, to offer words of gratitude, and to acknowledge the efforts and virtues of those around us. Finally, our words must pass through a third gate. Is it necessary so much of what we say is superfluous, driven by a need to fill silence or to assert our ego? By asking if our contribution is truly needed, we cultivate a powerful and dignified economy of speech. There is a wise old story about two wolves that perfectly illustrates the power of our communication. An elder is teaching his grandchild, saying, "A fight is going on inside me. It is a terrible fight between two wolves. One wolf is darkness and despair. He is anger, envy, greed, resentment, and ego. The other wolf is light and hope. He is joy, peace, love, kindness, compassion, and truth. This same fight is going on inside you, and inside every person." The grandchild thinks for a moment and asks, "Grandfather, which wolf will win?" The elder replies simply, "The one you feed." Our words are the food we offer to the wolves inside ourselves and inside others. Every time we speak with criticism, blame, or harshness, we are feeding the wolf of darkness. Every time we speak with kindness, appreciation, and understanding, we are feeding the wolf of light. In every single conversation, we have a choice about which reality we want to nourish into existence. Part of this practice also involves embracing the power of noble silence. In a world filled with noise, silence can be one of the most compassionate forms of communication. When we are feeling angry or reactive, a period of silence can prevent us from saying things we will later regret. It gives the storm time to pass. When another person is speaking, our silent, attentive presence can be far more valuable than any words we could offer. It is a silence that is not empty or awkward, but spacious, alive, and filled with respect. By weaving these practices together, by listening deeply to understand, and by speaking words that are true, kind, and necessary, we transform our relationships. We learn to build bridges of connection rather than walls of separation. The practice of mindful communication brings clarity and peace to the beautiful and often complex dance of our human connections. As we begin to clear the clutter from our relationships, we often feel a natural pull to simplify other areas of our lives as well. The clarity we cultivate in our hearts seeks to be mirrored in our homes, our schedules, and our priorities. Our journey now turns from the art of connecting with others to the art of simplifying our own lives, to discover the profound peace and freedom that can be found in a life of elegant simplicity. As we cultivate clarity in our hearts and in our communication, a natural desire arises to see that clarity reflected in our outer lives. We begin to notice how the clutter in our homes, the frantic pace of our schedules, and the constant noise of the digital world can create a kind of inner static, disrupting the peace we so carefully nurture. We live in a world that worships at the altar of more. More success, more possessions, more information, more experiences. We are told that a full life is a life filled with things, and a busy schedule is the sign of an important person. Yet, for many of us, this pursuit of more leaves us feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, and strangely empty. The path of wisdom offers a radical alternative, not as a fashionable trend of aesthetic minimalism, but as a deep spiritual practice. This is the practice of simplicity, the intentional choice to remove the non-essential in order to make space for what truly nourishes the soul. It is not about deprivation, it is about liberation. This practice often begins with our physical environment. Look around your own home. Every object that you owns a piece of you in return. It requires your time, your energy, and your attention. You had to work to earn the money to buy it. You must spend time cleaning it, maintaining it, storing it, and organizing it. You may spend mental energy worrying about it being broken or stolen. Our possessions, which promise freedom and happiness, can quietly become the bars of a very comfortable cage. The Buddhist teaching on clinging, or upadana, applies just as much to our material goods as it does to our opinions. The practice of simplifying our environment is a form of meditation in action. It involves picking up each object and asking, not just do I need this, but a deeper question. Does this object support my deepest values and my well-being? Does this add peace to my life? Or does it add stress? This is not a call for rigid asceticism, but for conscious, mindful consumption. It is about freeing ourselves from the burden of our belongings so that our most precious resources, our time and attention, can be used for things that truly matter. There is an old story of a wealthy merchant who lived in a grand mansion filled with priceless art, luxurious fourniture, and countless treasures. One day, he went to visit a wise sage who lived in a simple, one-room hut containing only a mat for sleeping, a bowl for eating, and a few books. The merchant was shocked by the sage's sparse surroundings. "How can you possibly be happy living with so little?" he asked. The sage smiled gently and replied by asking his own question. "And where are all of your belongings?" The merchant scoffed. "At my home." "Of course," he said. "I am only a traveler here, just passing through." The sage's smile widened. "So am I," he said. This simple story illuminates a profound truth. We are all just travelers passing through this life. We mistake our temporary encampments for permanent homes and weigh ourselves down with heavy baggage that we can never truly keep. Simplicity is the art of learning to travel light. This art extends far beyond our physical possessions. The most draining clutter is often invisible. The clutter we accumulate in our minds and in our time. We are drowning in information clutter, the constant stream of news, emails, notifications, and social media updates keeps our minds in a state of perpetual agitation and exhaustion. A crucial part of simplifying our lives is a digital declutter, consciously choosing what information we allow into our minds, setting clear boundaries with our devices, and courageously scheduling times for silence and non-stimulation. We also suffer from schedule clutter. We have internalized the belief that being busy is a virtue. We fill every empty space in our calendars, rushing from one activity to another, mistaking this constant motion for a meaningful life. The practice here is to rediscover the beauty of empty space, to intentionally schedule time for rest, for reflection, for walks with no destination, for simply being, rather than constantly doing. It is about learning the power of a gentle but firm no to commitments that do not align with our core values, thereby honoring the sanctity of our own energy. This leads us to a profound shift in perspective, from the anxiety of FOMO, the fear of missing out, to the deep contentment of JOMO, the joy of missing out. FOMO is the voice of the insecure ego, the restless fear that someone, somewhere else, is having a better, more exciting experience than we are. It keeps us scrolling, comparing, and perpetually dissatisfied with our own reality. JOMO is the peaceful fruit of a simplified life. It is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are exactly where you need to be, doing what is essential for your own journey. It is the liberating realization that you do not need to attend every party, know every piece of news, or have every experience. It is the deep joy of being content with a quiet evening, a good book, a meaningful conversation, or the simple pleasure of your own company. It is essential to understand that this path of simplicity is not a celebration of poverty. It is about finding the middle way, the elegant balance of having enough, and more importantly, knowing for yourself what enough truly is. For one person, this might mean a tiny apartment and a handful of belongings. For a family with children, it will look very different. The external form is not what matters. What matters is the internal intention, the conscious choice to live with less distraction, less environmental impact, and less mental burden. The goal is to curate a life, both inner and outer, that is intentional, purposeful, and free from the tyranny of the non-essential. Ultimately, the freedom that simplicity provides is the freedom from the ceaseless, exhausting desire for more. We step off the hamster wheel of consumption and comparison. We discover that true wealth is not measured by what we have, but by how little we need to be happy. We create space. Space in our homes, space in our schedules, and most importantly, space in our minds. And in that quiet, uncluttered space, we can finally begin to hear the subtle whispers of our own heart. We have more time and energy for our relationships, for our creativity, for our spiritual practice, and for the simple miracle of being alive. This conscious choice to simplify our lives is a profound act of taking responsibility for our own well-being. This very idea of conscious choice and its inevitable consequences lies at the heart of one of the most fundamental laws of the cosmos, the law of karma. As we declutter our lives, we begin to see with greater clarity how every choice, no matter how small, sends a ripple out into the world. Our journey now takes us into the very heart of this law of cause and effect. As we journey deeper into the practice of mindfulness, clearing the clutter from our minds and our lives, we begin to notice a profound truth. Every choice matters. Every thought we entertain, every word we speak, every action we take is a cause that will inevitably have an effect. This is the very heart of one of the most widely known, yet deeply misunderstood concepts in Eastern philosophy, the law of karma. In popular culture, karma is often portrayed as a kind of cosmic bookkeeping system, a force of divine reward and punishment. or a synonym for inescapable fate, but its original meaning is far more subtle, psychological, and empowering. The word karma, in the ancient language of Pali, simply means action or deed. It is not an external judge, but an internal and universal law of nature. As impersonal as the law of gravity, it is the simple, yet profound, principle that our actions have consequences, and that we are the primary architects of our own lives. The absolute core of this teaching, the key that unlocks its liberating power, lies in one word: intention. The Buddha's great insight was that the karmic weight of an action is determined not by the external act itself, nor by its result, but by the intention, the volition, the state of mind that motivates it. He said, "It is intention, O monks, that I call karma. Having intended, one then acts through body, speech, or mind." Think of it this way: a surgeon makes an incision with a scalpel. An attacker makes a similar motion with a knife. The physical actions are superficially alike, but the intentions are worlds apart. One is motivated by a desire to heal, an intention of compassion. The other is motivated by a desire to harm, an intention of hatred. The karmic seeds planted by these two actions are profoundly different, and the fruits they bear will be of a completely different nature. This understanding places the full power and responsibility for our lives directly into our own hands. We cannot always control the outcomes of our actions in a complex world, but we can always bring awareness to and choose the intention behind them. We create karma. We plant these intentional seeds through three primary doors. The most obvious door is the body, through our physical actions. When we offer a gift, help someone in need, or treat our body with care, we are planting wholesome karmic seeds. When we harm another being, steal, or act destructively, we are planting unwholesome seeds. The second door is speech. As we have seen, our words have immense power. When we speak words that are true, kind, and helpful, we create positive karma. When we speak words that are deceitful, harsh, or divisive, we create negative karma. The third and most subtle door is the mind itself. This is where the karmic process truly begins. Every thought is, in itself, a karmic action. A fleeting thought of generosity, even if not acted upon, plants a small seed of generosity. In the mind stream, a lingering thought of resentment, even if never spoken, plants a seed of bitterness. Our mind is like a garden, and in every moment, we are sowing the seeds of our future reality. The ripening of these karmic seeds is not always simple or immediate, which is why the law can be difficult to see. It is helpful to think of the metaphor of a farmer planting a field. Wholesome actions, those motivated by the selfless qualities of generosity, kindness, and wisdom, are like planting the seeds of fruit trees and fragrant flowers. Unwholesome actions, motivated by the selfish energies of greed, hatred, and delusion, are like planting the seeds of thorny bushes and poisonous weeds. A seed, once planted, does not sprout immediately. It requires the right conditions: good soil, sufficient water, and sunlight. In the same way, a karmic seed may ripen in this lifetime, in a future lifetime, or it may not ripen at all if the supporting conditions never arise. This explains the seeming paradox of why we sometimes see cruel people enjoying worldly success, or kind people experiencing great hardship. We are all living in a vast, complex field, simultaneously planting new seeds while experiencing the harvest from countless seeds planted in the distant past. Imagine two merchants who arrive at the same poor and desperate village. The first merchant's mind is immediately filled with greed. He thinks, "These people are ignorant. I can sell them cheap goods at inflated prices and make a fortune." He does so, and he leaves the village with his cart full of money. But his mind is filled with agitation, anxiety, and the fear of being discovered. The karmic seed he has planted is one of greed and fear. The second merchant arrives and sees the same poverty, but his mind is filled with compassion. He thinks, "These people are suffering. How can I help them?" He sells them quality goods at a fair price and gives some of his supplies away to the most needy. He leaves the village with far less money than the first merchant, but his mind is light, joyful, and filled with a deep sense of peace. The seed he has planted is one of generosity and love. The most immediate karmic result is not the money in the cart. It is the state of mind created by the action itself. The long-term results will grow from the quality of the seeds they have both sown. This brings us to the most empowering aspect of karma. Karma is not fate. It is not a rigid, deterministic sentence that we are condemned to carry out, because karma is rooted in our present moment intentions. We have the power to change our destiny in every single moment. While it is true that we are all inheriting the results of our past karma, the conditions of our birth, our family, our innate talents and challenges, our present response to these conditions is our new karma. The past creates the platform upon which we stand today, but the direction we step in next is up to us. Imagine you are the captain of a sailboat. The winds and the ocean currents are your past karma. You have no control over them, but how you set your sails, how you steer the rudder in this moment, that is your present karma. A skillful sailor can use even a harsh wind to navigate towards a safe harbor. In the same way, we can use the difficult conditions created by our past to cultivate wisdom, patience, and compassion in the present. This means that no one is ever hopelessly lost or doomed. Every moment, every breath is a fresh opportunity to plant a wholesome seed and change the course of our lives. The practice, then, is to bring mindfulness to our intentions. Before we act, before we speak, we can create a small pause. In that sacred pause, we can ask ourselves, what is the motivation here? Is this thought, word, or deed coming from a place of clarity and kindness, or from a place of confusion, fear, or selfishness? This simple, mindful check-in is the exercise of our ultimate freedom. It allows us to break free from the chains of our past conditioning and to become the conscious, intentional creators of our future. Understanding karma is understanding that we are the artists of our own lives. We are shaping our reality, moment by moment, through the power of our intentions. This deep sense of personal responsibility naturally broadens our perspective. If our actions create our world, they must also impact the world of others. We begin to see that we are not isolated islands, but are intrinsically part of a vast and intricate web of cause and effect. This insight opens the door to the next profound teaching, the truth of interdependence, which reveals that nothing and no one ever exists alone. The law of karma reveals to us that we are the architects of our own lives, that our intentional actions sculpt our future. This profound understanding of personal responsibility is a gateway to an even deeper and more expansive truth, a truth that lies at the very heart of the Buddha's enlightenment. It is the wisdom of interdependence, or pratitya samutpada. If karma is the law of cause and effect on a personal level, interdependence is the revelation that the entire universe is a single, seamless web of cause and effect, in which nothing, absolutely nothing, exists in isolation. This insight is the ultimate antidote to the illusion of the separate self, dissolving the imaginary boundaries that create so much of our loneliness, fear, and conflict. The core principle of interdependence can be expressed in a simple, elegant formula. This is, because that is. This is not, because that is not. This arises, because that arises. This ceases to be, because that ceases to be. What this means is that everything in existence comes into being only because of its relationship with other things. Nothing possesses a solid, independent, or separate identity. Its identity is created by the web of conditions that support it. To make this clear, the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh invites us to practice looking deeply at a simple sheet of paper. At first glance, a sheet of paper appears to be a separate, solid object, but if we look with the eyes of interdependence, we see something miraculous. We can see the sunshine within the paper, because without the sun, the tree from which this paper was made could not have grown. So, the sun is a part of the paper. If we look deeper, we can see a cloud floating within its fibers. Without the cloud, there is no rain. Without the rain, the tree dies. So the cloud is undeniably present here. Looking further, we see the forest, the earth, and the minerals that nourish the tree's roots. We see the logger who cut the tree down, and we can see his parents, who gave him life. We see the bread he ate for breakfast, which means we see the wheat field, the farmer, and the baker. We see the factory that turned the wood pulp into this sheet, and the engineer who designed the machinery. If we were to take any single one of these non-paper elements and return it to its source, if we gave the sunshine back to the sun, the rain back to the cloud, the logger back to his parents, this sheet of paper could not possibly exist. So, the astonishing truth is that this sheet of paper is empty of a separate self. Its entire being is composed of the non-paper elements of the cosmos. The paper is the sun, the cloud, the forest, and the farmer. It has no independent existence. The word the master coined for this reality is interbeing. The paper can only interbe with everything else. This is not a philosophy. It is a reality that we can see for ourselves. And what is true for the paper is also true for us. Let us now turn this deep looking upon ourselves. We think, I am this body. But what is this body? It is composed of the food we have eaten, the water we have drunk, the air we are breathing in this very moment. The food contains the sun, the earth, and the rain. The air connects us to every plant and every other breathing creature. Our body is made of our parents, our grandparents, and a chain of countless ancestors stretching back to the dawn of life. The entire history of the cosmos is written in our DNA, and what of our mind? Our thoughts are shaped by the language we speak. a language we did not invent. Our ideas are inspired by the books we have read, the art we have seen, the conversations we have had. Our very consciousness is conditioned by the culture we are immersed in, just like the sheet of paper. If we were to remove any of these non-use elements, we would cease to be. We, too, are empty of a separate self. Our being is a temporary, miraculous convergence point for the entire universe. In the rich tapestry of Mahayana Buddhism, there is a beautiful and poetic image for this reality. The metaphor of Indra's net, imagine vast, cosmic net, stretching infinitely in all directions. At every node where the threads of the net cross, there hangs a single, perfectly clear and multifaceted jewel. Each jewel is unique, but because every jewel is perfectly polished, it reflects every other jewel in the entire net. When you look deeply into any one jewel, you see the reflections of all the others, and in the reflection of each of those jewels, you see the reflections of all the other jewels, and so on, ad infinitum. Each of us is a jewel in this celestial net. We are an individual expression of the whole, yet we also contain the whole within us. The joy of one jewel adds to the luster of the entire net. The suffering of one jewel casts a shadow on all the others. The separation we feel is an illusion, a trick of perception that fails to see the infinite reflections that bind us all together. When we begin to truly feel this deep interconnection in our hearts, it changes everything. It provides the most profound foundation for an ecological ethic. We realize that polluting the river is polluting our own bloodstream, that cutting down the forest is destroying our own lungs. We understand that we are not masters of nature. We are nature. This insight also transforms our relationship with others. We see that the suffering of another person is not separate from our own. Their pain is reflected in our jewel. Indifference becomes impossible, and compassion becomes the natural, spontaneous response of a heart that understands its own interconnectedness. The illusion of a hard boundary at our skin dissolves, and with it, the painful feeling of loneliness and alienation that plagues so much of modern life. How can we ever be truly alone when the sun, the clouds, our ancestors, and the entire universe are all present within us, conspiring in every moment to create our existence? We belong to the universe, and the universe belongs to us. The wisdom of interdependence does not negate our individuality. It places it in its proper context. We are each a unique and precious jewel, but our brilliance comes from the light we share and reflect with all the others. This shift in perspective, from seeing ourselves as isolated fragments to understanding ourselves as interconnected threads in a single magnificent tapestry, is one of the most healing realizations we can have. And when we truly begin to feel this deep connection, when we see the farmer in our food and the cloud in the water we drink, a powerful and joyful emotion arises spontaneously in the heart. This emotion is the natural response to seeing the vast web of causes and conditions that support our life in every single moment. This feeling is gratitude. Our journey, therefore, now turns to the joyful and healing practice of actively cultivating this grateful heart. When we begin to see the world through the lens of interdependence, a profound shift occurs in the heart. The recognition that our life is upheld in every moment by a vast and invisible web of causes and conditions gives rise to a powerful, spontaneous, and joyful emotion. This emotion is gratitude, not the polite, fleeting, "thank you," we offer for a gift, but a deep, abiding state of awareness and appreciation for the sheer miracle of our existence. In a world that constantly directs our attention toward what is wrong, what is missing, and what we lack, the practice of gratitude is a revolutionary act. It is a conscious retraining of the mind to see the overwhelming abundance that is already present, and in doing so, to unlock a source of happiness that is not dependent on our external circumstances. It is important to understand that true gratitude, as a spiritual practice, is not a form of superficial positive thinking. It does not mean denying the existence of pain, injustice, or difficulty in our lives or in the world. It is not about putting on a happy face and pretending everything is perfect. The practice of gratitude is far more robust and resilient than that. It is the capacity to hold the awareness of both the challenges and the blessings simultaneously. It is the ability to acknowledge the cracked foundation, while also appreciating the solid roof over our head. It is the wisdom to see that even on the most difficult of days, there are still countless conditions supporting our life for which we can be genuinely thankful. Gratitude is not the denial of reality. It is the courageous act of paying full attention to the entirety of reality. The most direct way to cultivate a grateful heart is to begin a simple, daily practice of observation. This can take the form of a mental list or a written journal. Each day, take a few moments to consciously name the things for which you are grateful. At first, you can start with the simple and the obvious. I am grateful for the food I ate for breakfast. I am grateful for this warm cup of tea. I am grateful for the bed I slept in last night. But then, begin to look deeper with the eyes of interdependence. I am grateful for the farmer who grew the oats for my breakfast, and for the sun and the rain that nourished them. I am grateful for the truck driver who brought them to the store. I am grateful for the person who designed this teacup, and for the earth that provided the clay. Suddenly, a simple breakfast becomes a nexus of cosmic cooperation. The practice can then evolve to include our challenges. I am grateful for this difficult person in my life, for they are teaching me patience. I am grateful for my past failures, for they have been my wisest teachers. This is not about pretending to enjoy pain, but about recognizing that even our struggles can be a source of growth and wisdom. There is a story of a young monk in a monastery who was perpetually unhappy. He complained that his robes were too coarse, the morning chants were too early, the food was too bland, and the meditation sessions were too long. His mind was a magnet for dissatisfaction, always focused on what was wrong. His teacher, the wise old abbot, seeing the young monk's misery, gave him a special practice for one day. He said, "For this entire day, you are forbidden from complaining. Instead, for every single action you take, you must pause and silently give thanks for all the conditions that made it possible." The young monk reluctantly agreed. Before he ate his bland rice porridge, he paused. He gave thanks to the cook, the farmer, the rain, the sun, and the soil. Before he put on his coarse robes, he gave thanks to the weaver, the person who dyed the cloth, the cotton plant itself. Before he opened a book in the library, he gave thanks to the author who wrote it, the papermaker, the tree, and the lineage of teachers who preserved the knowledge within. He continued this all day. By evening, he came to the abbot with tears streaming down his face. "Master," he whispered, "I never knew that I was a king. I have been living in a palace, receiving millions of gifts every second of the day. And I have never noticed, we are all, in some way, this young monk. We live in a universe of staggering generosity, but our minds are so often fixated on the one small thing that is out of place. The practice of gratitude is simply the act of opening our eyes to the palace we already inhabit. We can apply this practice directly to our own bodies. So often, we live in an adversarial relationship with our bodies, only paying attention to them when they are in pain, when they are sick, or when they do not conform to our aesthetic ideals. Take a moment to bring a grateful awareness to this incredible vehicle. Feel gratitude for your feet, which have carried you thousands of miles. Feel gratitude for your lungs, which breathe for you all day and all night without any conscious instruction. Feel gratitude for your heart, a faithful drum that has been beating tirelessly for you since before you were born. Feel gratitude for your eyes that allow you to see a sunset, and your ears that allow you to hear music. To inhabit your body with a sense of gratitude, rather than judgment, is a profoundly healing act. Gratitude is also a powerful antidote to the poison of the ego. The ego's narrative is one of self-made success. I earned this. I accomplished this. I deserve this. It fosters a sense of entitlement and pride. Gratitude, on the other hand, reveals the truth of our radical dependence on others and on conditions beyond our control. It cultivates humility. We realize that our successes are never solely our own. They are built on the support of our parents, our teachers, our friends, the discoveries of generations past, and a healthy dose of sheer luck. A heart filled with gratitude has no room for arrogance. Finally, gratitude is not a passive or solitary feeling. It naturally blossoms into generous and compassionate action. When we feel truly and deeply thankful for all that we have been given, the neurotic impulse to hoard, cling, and accumulate begins to fade. We feel a natural desire to give back, to contribute to the web of life that so generously supports us. We want to be the farmer, the cook, and the teacher for others. A grateful person becomes a source of light in the world. Their appreciation is infectious, and their generosity creates ripples of well-being that extend far beyond their own life. This joyful practice of gratitude fundamentally shifts our entire orientation to life, from a perspective of scarcity to one of boundless abundance. It doesn't necessarily change our life circumstances, but it completely transforms our experience of them, allowing us to find deep contentment right here, right now, with things as they are. This profound ability to appreciate life as it is, rather than demanding that it conform to an idealized fantasy of perfection, is a crucial spiritual skill. It prepares our hearts and minds for the next step in our journey, the wisdom of embracing life's inherent imperfections, its rough edges, and its transient, flawed beauty. The practice of gratitude opens our eyes to the abundant beauty and support that already exists in our lives. It allows us to find contentment with things as they are. This appreciative awareness is the perfect foundation for our next step, a profound shift in perspective that allows us to find peace not just with the good, but with the entire, messy, beautiful reality of existence. We live in a culture that is deeply obsessed with an ideal of perfection. We are bombarded daily by images of flawless bodies, pristine homes, and perfectly curated lives. This relentless pursuit of an unattainable ideal is a hidden source of immense suffering. It fuels a constant low-grade anxiety, a feeling of inadequacy, and a fear of being exposed as the imperfect, vulnerable human beings we all are. The wisdom traditions of the East, particularly from Japan, offer a powerful antidote to this tyranny of perfection. It is a worldview captured in the term wabi-sabi, a philosophy that invites us to embrace imperfection and to find profound beauty in the transient, the flawed, and the authentic nature of things. Wabi-sabi is a concept that defies easy translation, as it speaks more to a feeling in the heart than a definition in the mind. It is composed of two separate but related ideas. Wabi refers to a kind of rustic simplicity, a quiet and understated elegance. It is the feeling one gets from a simple, handmade clay bowl, as opposed to ornate, machine-made porcelain. It is a contentment with simplicity, a freedom from the need to impress. Sabi, on the other hand, refers to the beauty that emerges with the passage of time. It is the patina on an old bronze statue, the weathered wood of an ancient temple, the faded ink on a beloved letter. It is the recognition of the grace that comes from wear, from history, and from the gentle touch of impermanence. Together, wabi-sabi is the art of appreciating beauty that is imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. It is a turning away from the fantasy of flawlessness and a turning towards the beauty of reality as it is. Once you understand this principle, you begin to see wabi-sabi everywhere. You see it in the crack on a cherished coffee mug, a mark that speaks of its long and faithful service. You see it in the gnarled, twisted branches of an old pine tree, a testament to its resilience against wind and storm. You see it in the uneven texture of a hand-woven scarf, in the moss growing on a stone wall, in the way a favorite book's spine has softened with countless readings. It is a beauty that has soul, that tells a story. It is the opposite of the cold, sterile perfection of mass-produced plastic. It is the beauty of authenticity. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly captures this spirit. The great tea master, Sen no Rikyu, once asked his son to prepare the garden for some important guests. The son worked for hours, meticulously raking the gravel, pulling every last weed, trimming every bush, until the garden was in a state of absolute, pristine perfection. He proudly presented his work to his father. Rikyu surveyed the flawless garden in silence. He then walked over to a maple tree and with a gentle movement, shook one of its branches. A few brilliant red and gold leaves drifted down, scattering themselves randomly across the perfect green moss. "There," Rikyu said softly, "now it is ready." The lesson is profound. The son's version of perfection was sterile and lifeless. It lacked the touch of nature, the element of the uncontrived. The master's small, intuitive act reintroduced the wabi-sabi element of gentle chaos, of impermanence, making the garden feel alive and truly harmonious. The most transformative application of this wisdom is to turn it inward, upon ourselves and our own lives. We are not meant to be flawless, mass-produced objects. We are organic, ever-changing beings, and our beauty lies in our very imperfection. Consider your own body. It is not a perfectly symmetrical machine. It bears scars, moles, wrinkles, and signs of aging. Our culture teaches us to see these as flaws to be concealed, corrected, and erased. The wabi-sabi view invites us to see them as the marks of a life fully lived, a map of our personal journey, each line telling a story of laughter, worry, or wonder. To embrace the wabi-sabi of our body is a radical act of self-love. The same is true for our minds and our personalities. We have quirks, irrational fears, and messy, contradictory emotions. We are not perfectly enlightened or consistently rational. We have a shadow side. The practice is to stop judging ourselves so harshly for this human inheritance. It is to meet our own insecurities and eccentricities with the same gentle appreciation we might offer a cracked, handmade bowl. This is the deep practice of self-compassion, of befriending every part of ourselves. And our lives themselves are profoundly wabi-sabi. They do not follow a straight, predictable line. Our path is filled with unexpected detours, glorious failures, unfinished symphonias, and beautiful messes. The relentless pressure to present a life story that is a perfect, upward trajectory is exhausting. Wabi-sabi gives us permission to find beauty and meaning in the crooked, unpredictable journey we are actually on. This worldview is a beautiful, aesthetic expression of the core Buddhist teachings we have already explored. The appreciation of things that are weathered and fading is a direct experience of anicca, or impermanence. It is a celebration of change, rather than a resistance to it. The letting go of the need for perfection is a direct antidote to dukkha, the suffering that arises from our unrealistic cravings and attachments, and the embracing of our own authentic, flawed nature is the practical application of anatta, or non-self. It is the letting go of the rigid, idealized self-image that the ego tries so hard to maintain, and relaxing into the fluid, imperfect, and ever-changing process that we truly are. This philosophy frees us from the paralysis of perfectionism. Perfectionism tells us, don't start until you can do it perfectly. It keeps us from writing the book, from starting the business, from having the difficult conversation. Embracing imperfection gives us the freedom to be beginners, to be vulnerable, to make mistakes, and to learn. It replaces the harsh, incessant voice of the inner critic with the gentle, encouraging voice of a wise and trusted friend. It allows us to finally relax and simply get on with the beautiful, messy business of living. To see the world through the lens of wabi-sabi is a profound act of peacemaking with reality. We stop demanding that life and ourselves be something they are not. We find a deep and abiding beauty, not in a distant, idealized future, but right here, in the midst of our transient, precious, and perfectly imperfect lives. This deep acceptance of impermanence in the small things, in a fading flower or a wrinkle on our skin, is a powerful training for the heart. It prepares us to face the greatest impermanence of all. By learning to find grace in the gentle decay of a fallen leaf, we are cultivating the wisdom and courage to approach the ultimate transition, the final imperfection, with a sense of peace. Our journey now leads us to the brave and essential practice of contemplating our own mortality, having learned to find beauty in the imperfect nature of life, to see the grace in a weathered stone and a cracked teacup. We have been training our hearts for the greatest of all lessons in imperfection. We have been preparing to face the ultimate truth of our wabi-sabi existence, the truth of impermanence. The path of wisdom now invites us to turn our attention with courage and clarity towards a subject our modern culture has made its last great taboo, the contemplation of our own death. In our world, death is often seen as a medical failure, a dark secret to be hidden away, a topic to be avoided at all costs for fear of inviting bad luck or sinking into despair. But the great wisdom traditions teach the very opposite. They teach that the regular and mindful contemplation of death, a practice known as Maranasati, is not a morbid or depressing activity. It is, in fact, one of the most powerfully life-affirming practices we can ever undertake. We do not contemplate death to fall in love with oblivion. We contemplate death to fall deeply, truly, and gratefully in love with life. The entire practice rests on holding two simple, unshakable truths in our awareness. The first is that death is absolutely certain. It is not a possibility, not a risk. It is a biological inevitability for every single being that has ever been born. We see it all around us, in the cycles of nature and in the lives of others. The young die, the old die, the rich die, the poor die, the healthy die, and the sick die. No one is exempt. There is no escape clause in this contract. My death is not a question of if, but only a question of when. This leads to the second great truth. The time of our death is completely and utterly uncertain. We live with the unexamined assumption that we have a vast store of time ahead of us, that death is something that happens to old people, far off in the distant future. But a sober look at reality shows us this is a comforting illusion. We simply do not know. It could be in 50 years. It could be tomorrow. It could be in the next hour. To hold these two realities together, the certainty of death and the uncertainty of its timing, is the essence of Maranasati. It is a practice that cuts like a laser through the fog of our complacency and procrastination. It awakens us to the fierce preciousness of this very day, this very breath. The contemplation itself can be a gentle, daily reflection. It is not about visualizing gruesome ends, but about repeatedly and calmly reacquainting the mind with reality. We can sit quietly and reflect. My body is of a nature to die. This is natural. This is normal. This is its way. We can look at our hands and see that they are temporary. We can feel our breath and know that one day there will be a final exhalation. We can see an ambulance pass, read an obituary, or notice a dead bird on the path. And instead of pushing the thought away, we can use it as a reminder. Just like that being, I too will one day be gone. One of the most powerful reflections is to consider what will happen at the moment of death, to realize that at that time, all of our worldly possessions, our status, our reputation, and even our most beloved relationships will be stripped away. The only thing that will truly belong to us, the only thing that will accompany our consciousness into what comes next, is the quality of our own mind, the karmic legacy of our thoughts, words, and deeds. There is a profound Buddhist story that illustrates the transformative power of this insight. A young woman named Kisa Gautami was driven to madness by grief when her only child died. She refused to accept his death, and clutching his small body, she went from house to house in her village, desperately begging for a medicine that could restore him to life. People pitied her, thinking she had lost her mind. Finally, one wise person advised her to go and see the Buddha. She went to him, laid her son at his feet, and pleaded for a cure. The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and said he could help her. But first, he said, she must bring him back a single mustard seed. But it must be from a house where no one, not a parent, a child, a spouse, or a servant, has ever died. Filled with a desperate hope, Kisa Gotami began her search. She went from door to door. At every house, the people were kind and immediately offered her a mustard seed. But when she asked the crucial question, has anyone in this family ever died, the story was always the same. One person would say, the living are few, but the dead are many. I lost my husband last year. Another would say, I am grieving for my mother. Another, do not remind me of my deepest sorrow. She went through the entire village and could not find a single household untouched by death. As the sun began to set, the profound truth of her quest dawned on her. Her own personal, unbearable grief was not unique. It was the universal, shared inheritance of all human beings. Her heart broke open, not with madness, but with a deep and sober understanding. She returned to the Buddha, no longer seeking a magic cure, but with a heart that was ready to learn about the nature of life and death. This is the gift of Maranasati. It melts our sense of isolation and connects us to the great stream of humanity. When we contemplate death, it does not make life feel meaningless. It does the exact opposite. It clarifies our priorities with astonishing speed, the petty grievances we hold, the trivial worries that consume our days, the relentless pursuit of more status or more stuff. All of this is revealed to be an absurd waste of our precious, limited time. The practice forces us to ask the most important questions. What truly matters? If this were my last year, my last month, my last day, how would I spend it? This creates a sense of spiritual urgency, a motivation to practice, to love, and to awaken. Now, not in some imaginary future, when we imagine we will have more time. And here is the great paradox. By turning to face death voluntarily, we systematically dismantle our fear of it. The terror of death is fueled by our denial and our resistance. The more we push it away, the bigger its shadow grows in our subconscious. By making death a familiar object of our contemplation, we rob it of its power to terrorize us. It becomes less of a monstrous stranger and more of a sober, trusted advisor. And as our fear of death diminishes, our joy in life expands exponentially. Every meal becomes more delicious. Every sunrise, more miraculous. Every conversation with a loved one more precious. Because we know that it is all fleeting, we stop taking the gift of life for granted. To contemplate death is to learn how to live each day with the wholeness and integrity we might bring to our last. It is the dark, fertile soil from which a life of meaning, purpose, and profound joy can grow. It strips away all that is false and focuses our hearts on what is essential and true. This unflinching acceptance of our own physical end naturally brings forth one of humanity's oldest and most profound questions. If this life is just one chapter, what is the nature of the entire story? This leads us from the finality of this single life to the vast, cyclical nature of existence itself, to the ancient teachings on rebirth and the great, turning wheel of samsara, the sober contemplation of our own death. The one great certainty of this life inevitably opens the door to humanity's oldest and most profound question: what happens next? when the breath ceases and the body grows cold? Is that the absolute end, a descent into utter nothingness, or does some aspect of us continue? The world's spiritual traditions have offered many answers to this mystery, but the Buddhist perspective is unique, subtle, and flows directly from the principles of non-self and karma that we have already explored. The teaching is not offered as a rigid dogma that one must believe without question, but as a vast and logical framework for understanding the continuity of consciousness, a framework known as rebirth. It is crucial to begin by making a clear distinction between the concept of rebirth and the more commonly known idea of reincarnation, reincarnation, as it is often understood, implies the existence of a solid, unchanging soul, an eternal self, or Atman, that sheds a worn-out body at death and takes on a new one, much like a person changing their clothes. The Buddhist teaching of anatta, or non-self, however, reveals that no such permanent, independent soul can be found. There is no solid entity to be reincarnated. So what is it that continues? The Buddhist answer is that it is not a thing that is reborn, but a process that continues. It is a stream of consciousness, a flow of karmic energy, propelled by the unresolved desires, habits, and karmic imprints of a life. A classic metaphor used to explain this is the flame of a candle. Imagine you have a candle that is nearly burnt out. Just before its flame expires, you use it to light the wick of a brand new candle. Now, consider the flame on the new candle. Is it the exact same flame as the one on the old candle? No. Is it a completely different and unrelated flame? Also no. The new flame is a direct continuation of the old one. Its existence was causally conditioned by the first flame. There was a transfer of energy and information, but no solid thing passed from one candle to the other. So it is with rebirth. The stream of consciousness at the moment of death, with all its accumulated karma, conditions the arising of a new consciousness in a new life. It is not the same person, but the new life is not entirely separate from the old. It is the next moment in a continuous, ever-changing process. This beginningless, cyclical process of being born, living, dying, and being reborn is known as samsara. The word literally means wandering on or perpetual wandering. It is not a place, but a process of us turning wheel of existence fueled by two primary forces, ignorance, avidya, particularly the ignorance of the Four Noble Truths, and craving, tanha, the insatiable thirst for pleasure and existence, propelled by our karma. We wander through various realms of existence, experiencing life as a human, as an animal, or even in heavenly or hellish states, which can be understood both as literal planes of existence and as powerful psychological states we experience even now. From the Buddhist perspective, every state within samsara, even a long and blissful life in a heavenly realm, is ultimately unsatisfactory because it is conditioned, impermanent, and does not offer a final, lasting peace. Imagine a weary traveler who finds himself waking up day after day in a different landscape. One day he wakes up in a scorching desert, and driven by a desperate thirst, he spends his entire day searching for water. He finds a small oasis, drinks his fill, feels a moment of profound relief, and then falls into a deep sleep. He then awakens in a dark, terrifying jungle, surrounded by the sounds of predators, driven by fear. He spends his entire day seeking safety, and upon finding a secure cave, he collapses in exhausted relief and falls asleep. The next day, he awakens in a luxurious palace, filled with every imaginable pleasure. He spends the day indulging his senses, but is haunted by the subtle fear that it will all be taken away from him. He clings to the pleasure, and eventually, he sleeps. This is samsara. We are this weary traveler. We wander from life to life, propelled by our changing desires, our thirsts, and our fears. We find moments of pleasure, moments of relief, but we never find an abiding home, never a true and lasting peace. The goal of the spiritual path is not to find a more comfortable room within this endless cycle, but to wake up from the cycle altogether. The Buddha taught that this cycle is not random. It is governed by a precise chain of cause and effect, known as the 12 links of dependent origination. This teaching details exactly how our fundamental ignorance leads to karmic formations, which in turn condition consciousness, and so on, through a chain that leads to birth, aging, and death, and then back to the beginning. The profound hope in this teaching is that because the process is conditioned, it can be unconditioned. Because the engine is fueled by specific causes, we can learn to stop supplying the fuel. We can, in fact, stop the great wheel from turning. Of course, the idea of rebirth is not a scientific hypothesis that can be proven or disproven in a laboratory. It is a teaching that asks to be considered as a coherent part of a larger worldview. It provides the vast canvas upon which the law of karma can be seen to play out with perfect justice. It explains why we are born with certain innate tendencies and dispositions, the karmic inheritance from a past we cannot remember. But whether one accepts the teaching of rebirth literally or not, its psychological truth is immensely powerful and practical in this very life. We can observe mini rebirths all the time. The angry, reactive person I was 5 years ago has, through practice and insight, died. A new, kinder person has been reborn in his place. In every moment, we are dying to who we were a moment ago and being reborn as someone new. To live with an understanding of rebirth is to appreciate the immense potential for transformation that exists in every single moment. To understand the nature of samsara is not to be pessimistic, but to be realistic. It is to see the game we are caught in, to understand its rules and its inherent limitations. It is to recognize that seeking ultimate happiness in any temporary, conditioned state is a futile endeavor, like trying to build a castle on the surface of a churning ocean. Once we truly comprehend the nature of our predicament, once we see the endlessness of the wandering and the subtle suffering inherent in every turn of the wheel, a powerful and urgent question arises in the heart. Is there a way out? Is there an alternative to this endless cycle of becoming the Buddha's most radical, most joyful, and most hopeful proclamation to the world was, yes, there is an end to suffering. There is an unconditioned reality, a state beyond all cause and effect, a peace that is not dependent on anything. This ultimate liberation, this final home, this cessation of all struggle, is called nirvana. Our journey now takes us to the very summit of the path, to an exploration of this supreme and blissful peace. Having witnessed the vast, wearying, and cyclical nature of samsara, the endless wandering fueled by our own craving and ignorance, the heart yearns for an alternative, It longs for a sanctuary, a place of safety, an end to the struggle. The most radical, hopeful, and profound promise of the Buddha's teaching is that such a state not only exists, but is attainable by any human being who is willing to walk the path. This ultimate peace, this final liberation from all suffering, is called nirvana, or nibbana in the ancient Pali tongue. It is the very summit of the spiritual journey, the shore beyond the turbulent ocean of birth and death. But what is it our minds, which are conditioned by time, space, and the logic of cause and effect, struggle to grasp that which is unconditioned? Therefore, nirvana is often best understood, at first, by what it is not. It is essential to clear away our preconceptions. Nirvana is not a place. It is not a heavenly paradise one goes to after death, filled with celestial pleasures and delights. The Buddha was clear that even the most blissful heavenly realms are still part of samsara, still subject to the law of impermanence. They are temporary respites, not the final goal. Nirvana is also not a state of annihilation, a blanketing void of nothingness. This is a common misunderstanding that the Buddha explicitly rejected as a nihilistic view, since the teaching of non-self, or anatta, reveals that there is no solid, unchanging soul to begin with. There is no self to be annihilated. Finally, nirvana is not an emotion, not even the emotion of supreme happiness as we understand it. Our experience of happiness is a conditioned feeling, dependent on causes, and therefore, it is impermanent. Nirvana is a peace that lies beyond the duality of happiness and sadness, pleasure and pain. So what is it? The word nirvana literally means to extinguish, to quench, or to blow out, like extinguishing the flame of a candle. The crucial question, then, is what exactly is being extinguished? It is not our life force, our awareness, or our self. What is extinguished are the very fires that cause our suffering, the flames that fuel the endless turning of the wheel of samsara. These are known as the three fires, or the three poisons. The first is the fire of greed, which includes all forms of craving, clinging, lust, and obsessive desire. The second is the fire of hatred, which includes all forms of anger, aversion, ill will, fear, and resentment. And the third, and most fundamental, is the fire of delusion, which is the deep ignorance and confusion about the true nature of reality, especially the ignorance of the Four Noble Truths. Our samsaric existence is like living in a world that is constantly ablaze with these three fires. Nirvana is the state of perfect coolness, clarity, and peace that is realized when these fires have been completely and permanently quenched in the heart and mind. Because this state is unconditioned, beyond our normal concepts, the Buddha used a series of powerful metaphors to point towards it. He called it the unborn, the uncreated, the unconditioned, a reality that is not subject to the laws of birth and death that govern everything else. He called it the island in the flood, a place of ultimate safety and refuge from the raging waters of suffering. He described it as the supreme peace, the ultimate security, the highest bliss. Most directly, he called it the cessation of craving, the end of suffering. It is the cool cave that offers relief from the scorching heat of the three fires. These are all fingers pointing at the moon. The purpose is not to endlessly analyze the finger, but to use it as a guide to see the moon for ourselves, to add a layer of nuance. The tradition speaks of two types of nirvana. The first is called nirvana, with a remainder. This is the state achieved by a fully awakened being, an arahant like the Buddha himself. While they are still alive, in Zucha being, the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion have been totally extinguished. They no longer create any new negative karma. However, they still have a body and mind, the remainder of their past karmic accumulations. They can still feel physical pain if their body is injured, but they do not create any mental suffering around it. They are no longer struck by the second arrow. The second type is called nirvana, without a remainder, or parinirvana. This is the state that occurs when an awakened being's physical body dies. Since the karmic fuel for rebirth has been exhausted, the process of rebirth, the cycle of samsara, comes to a complete end. What this state is like is said to be utterly beyond human language and conception. The Buddha maintained a noble silence on this matter, as any description would inevitably be partial and misleading. It is not existence as we know it, nor is it non-existence. It is simply the final, unbinding peace. A simple story helps to illustrate the difficulty of describing nirvana to one who has not experienced it. A turtle, who could live both in the water and on the land, had a friend who was a fish and had only ever known the water. One day, the turtle went for a long walk on the land, enjoying the feeling of the sun and the earth. When he returned to the pond, the fish was very curious. "What is this land you speak of?" asked the fish. The turtle tried to explain. "It is solid, and it is dry." The fish, whose entire reality was the opposite of this, was confused. "Is it cool and wet?" he asked. "No," said the turtle. "Does it flow and move?" "No." "Can you swim in it?" "No." The fish, after considering this, came to a conclusion. "This land you speak of does not flow. It is not wet, and you cannot swim in it. Therefore, it must be nothing at all, a complete void." The fish could not understand the land in terms of water, and the turtle could not describe the land in a way the fish could comprehend. We are the fish, living in the water of our conditioned, samsaric world. Nirvana is the land, but this ultimate peace is not an impossibly distant goal. The beauty of the path is that we can touch and experience little moments of nirvana, little tastes of this coolness, right here and now. Every time you mindfully notice a moment of anger arise, and you choose to let it go without acting on it, the resulting peace and release is a taste of nirvana. Every time you feel a strong craving for something, and you watch it pass without being enslaved by it, the freedom you experience is a taste of nirvana. Every act of pure, selfless generosity, free from any desire for recognition, gives the heart a taste of the bliss of nirvana. It is the peace that is already here, the natural state of the mind, when the fires of affliction are temporarily stilled. Nirvana, then, is the ultimate potential of the human mind, the final and lasting end of all suffering, achieved by the complete extinguishing of greed, hatred, and delusion. It is not a place we go to, but a state of purity and wisdom we realize within, having now understood the nature of our predicament in samsara and the nature of the ultimate cure in nirvana. only one final, practical question remains. What is the specific, step-by-step prescription for this healing? What is the actual path we must walk with our own feet to get from the burning shore of suffering to the cool, peaceful island of nirvana? This clear, comprehensive, and practical map for living is the Buddha's most enduring legacy. It is known as the Noble Eightfold Path. Here we stand, at the culmination of our journey of understanding. We have looked directly into the nature of our suffering. We have identified its cause in our own craving and clinging, and we have glimpsed the possibility of its end. The supreme peace of nirvana, the final piece of the puzzle, the Buddha's most practical and compassionate gift to the world, is the answer to the question, how do we get from the burning shore of samsara to the cool, peaceful island of nirvana? The answer is not a prayer, a ritual, or a blind belief. It is a path to be walked, a set of skills to be cultivated, a way of life to be lived. This is the fourth noble truth, the path leading to the cessation of suffering, known as the Noble Eightfold Path. This path is not a linear sequence of steps to be mastered one after another. Rather, it is a set of 8 interconnected factors that, when developed together, support and deepen one another, like the individual strands of a rope that weave together to create an unbreakable strength. These 8 factors are traditionally grouped into 3 essential trainings: the training in wisdom, the training in ethical conduct, and the training in mental discipline. Together, they form a complete and holistic guide for the purification of the heart and the liberation of the mind. The journey begins with the division of wisdom, or paññā, as it is the foundation that gives direction to all our efforts. The first path factor is right view, or samma ditthi. This is the compass, the rudder that steers our entire spiritual life. Right view is not about adopting a dogma, but about seeing reality clearly. As it is the direct understanding of the 4 noble truths, the experiential insight into the law of karma, and the deep, personal realization of the 3 marks of existence: that all conditioned things are impermanent, anicca, unsatisfactory, dukkha, and devoid of a solid, separate self, anatta. Without this clear view, our efforts, however sincere, will be misdirected. The second factor in the division of wisdom is right intention, or samma sankappa. If right view is the what, right intention is the why. It is the motivation that fuels our journey. This involves cultivating 3 wholesome intentions: the intention of renunciation, which is the desire to let go of clinging and craving; the intention of goodwill, which is the cultivation of loving kindness, metta towards all beings; and the intention of harmlessness, which is the cultivation of compassion, karuna, and the sincere wish that all beings be free from suffering. With our view clarified and our intention purified, we turn to the division of ethical conduct, or sila. This is how we manifest our inner wisdom in our actions in the world. It is the recognition that our liberation is tied to the well-being of others. The third path factor is right speech, or samma vāca. This is the practice of speaking words that are true, kind, necessary, and helpful. It means abstaining from lying, from divisive speech that sets people against each other, from harsh speech that wounds and abuses, and from idle chatter that distracts the mind and wastes precious time. The fourth factor is right action, or samma kammanta. This is the application of ethical principles to our bodily actions. At its core, it means following the precepts of abstaining from killing any living being, abstaining from taking that which is not freely given, and abstaining from sexual misconduct. It is the commitment to act in the world with gentleness, honesty, and respect for all. The fifth factor is right livelihood, or samma aiva. This is the practice of earning a living in a way that does not cause harm to oneself or to others. It means avoiding professions that trade in weapons, in poison, in intoxicants, or in the exploitation of other beings. Our work should be a support for our path, not a source of conflict, allowing us to live with a clear conscience and a peaceful mind. Finally, we come to the heart of the inner training, the division of mental discipline, or samadhi. This is the practice of taming and mastering our own minds. The sixth path factor is right effort, or samma vayama. This is the engaged, energetic, and joyful effort to be a skillful gardener of the mind. It involves four great efforts: the effort to prevent unwholesome, negative states from arising, the effort to abandon any unwholesome states that have already arisen, the effort to cultivate wholesome, positive states that have not yet arisen, and the effort to maintain and nourish the wholesome states that are already present. The seventh factor, and perhaps the heart of the entire path, is right mindfulness, or samma sati. This is the quality of present moment, non-judgmental awareness that we have explored so deeply. It is the anchor of the mind, the steady light that illuminates our inner and outer worlds. It is right mindfulness that allows us to know if our view is clear, if our intention is pure, and if our actions are skillful. It is the factor that makes all the other factors right. The eighth and final factor is right concentration, or samma samadhi. This is the ability to unify the mind, to gather its scattered energies and bring it to a state of calm, stable, one-pointed focus, while mindfulness is a broad, open awareness. Concentration is like focusing that awareness into a single, powerful beam. This state is often developed through formal meditation, allowing the mind to become so still and clear that it has the power to penetrate the deepest layers of reality and achieve profound, liberating insight. A concentrated mind is a powerful mind, capable of seeing through the illusions of the ego and experiencing the freedom of nirvana. These 8 factors, working in harmony, create a beautiful upward spiral of progress. The practice of ethical conduct, sila, creates a calm and clear conscience, which is the necessary foundation for deep concentration, samadhi. A calm and concentrated mind is the perfect instrument for seeing reality clearly and developing profound wisdom, panya. And this newfound wisdom, in turn, naturally inspires even deeper ethical conduct and mental clarity. It is the complete system for human flourishing. This noble eightfold path is the raft, built from the sturdy wood of ethical conduct, designed with the wisdom of right view, and sailed with the skill of mindfulness and concentration. It is the Buddha's timeless and compassionate answer to the question of how one crosses the vast ocean of suffering. It is not a path to be simply admired or believed in. It is a path to be walked with courage, with patience, and with every single step of our lives. Our journey together has been a long and deep one. We began in the familiar shadows of our own restlessness, acknowledging the subtle suffering that comes from clinging to a world that is always changing. We learned that the secret to peace was not to grip tighter, but to practice the gentle, courageous art of letting go. With the steady lamp of mindfulness, we turned our attention inward, illuminating the chaotic landscape of our own minds and learning to be present for our own lives. We used that light to see, with profound insight, the true nature of reality, its impermanence, its interconnectedness, and the liberating truth of non-self. We walked through the fires of our most difficult emotions, and we learned to cultivate a heart of boundless love and compassion. And finally, we were given the greatest of all gifts, a clear and practical map to guide our steps. The noble eightfold path. As our journey comes to a close, let the essence of this path distill into a single, core understanding. Peace is not, and never will be, the absence of storms in the world outside, the waves of life, of gain and loss, of praise and blame, of joy and sorrow, will continue to roll. True peace, the unshakable peace of nirvana, is the discovery of a stillness within our own hearts that remains calm and steady. Even as the storms rage, it is the realization that happiness is not a destination to be reached or a prize to be acquired. It is not in the next achievement, the next relationship, or the next possession. It is an inside job. It is the natural radiance of a mind that has been liberated from the fever of craving and the prison of the ego. Know this: the potential for this profound peace, this ultimate freedom, is not something reserved for saints or sages in faraway monasteries. It is your own deepest nature, your birthright as a conscious being. The seeds of mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom are already dormant within you, waiting only for your attention and care to blossom. You have the tools. Every breath is an opportunity to return to the present moment. Every difficult emotion is an opportunity to practice compassion. Every interaction with another person is an opportunity to build a bridge of understanding. The path is not walked in giant, heroic leaps, but one small, mindful, and courageous step at a time. In his final days, the Buddha gave this last instruction to his followers, a message that has echoed through the ages. He urged them not to seek salvation from any external power or authority, but to rely on their own diligent effort. He said, "Be an island unto yourself. Be a refuge unto yourself. Seeking no other refuge, let the truth be your island. Let the truth be your refuge." The path has been shown, the tools have been offered, and the capacity for awakening lies within your own heart and mind. The rest of the journey is yours. Be a light unto yourself.